What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Reel Me In, a movie podcast where you didn't really ask for it, but hey, we're going to give it to you anyways. This is a podcast where we talk about anything, everything, and, well, anything about movies. I'm one of your co-hosts, Chase Lee, and hey guys, listen, if you were searching on the web for another movie podcast, or you were confused, you didn't know where to go, you didn't have a shepherd to guide you towards the best one on the internet, and you accidentally stumbled across this one, well, I can tell you right now, we are the best one. We have a lot of medals to prove it. Not really. But, you know, if you did stumble across us and you want to give us a shot, welcome. We do a lot of stuff here. If you are new, then we do, we go over some movie news and some movie trailers that drop throughout the week and commentate on them for you guys. And then we will have reviews of big movies that drop that weekend, or maybe smaller movies, and of course, box office results to accompany it. And if you're a returning listener, welcome back. You guys are awesome all the same. Yes, so this is episode 208. We will be reviewing the second weekend drop of 50 Shades Freed. That is the whole entire episode. So if you tuned in for the other thing, then you be mistaken. But no, so that's what we're doing. No, we are going to be doing the latest Marvel installment of Black Panther, and then Joel will have a mini review that he will reveal as soon as I throw it over to him. Before I do throw it over to him, please spread this around and, comment, like, share, do whatever, and let people know this is the definitive movie podcast, but I can't do this alone. I gotta do it with my co-host, Joseph. That's not even his name. Joel, how are we doing this week on Black Panther week?
I'm doing good, Chasef.
That sounds really bad. Yours sounds natural. Mine sounds really bad.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I'm pretty good. It's in the middle of a sale weekend at work, President's Day weekend, so a lot of people and, potentially illegal things happening, and that sounds bad. Whoops. That's not what we do. Just very eventful.
Apparently we turned into a conspiracy theory podcast.
Exactly. Yeah, it's been an interesting week. Got my car back finally after like 2.5 weeks, and so otherwise, obviously I was at home for a lot of that, and otherwise, just at work. Saw Black Panther, saw Early Man, which is going to be my extra review today, the new Aardman animation movie. And yeah, so one thing happened, but it's kind of confidential, so it's can't really talk about that. That was an eventful thing, but other than that, pretty much kind of a blah week.
Yeah, same-ish here. I got through my second round of The Office, which was always a delight. I watched the first season of The End of the Fucking World. Yes, I promised myself I would not curse as much on this podcast, but that is what the show is called, so you can't throw that in my face. But anyways, that show was really cool. It's 8 episodes long, 20-ish minutes apiece. It's based on I believe, graphic novel or a comic book, which ties into, this weekend we're talking about another comic book. Basically, the high school kid, he claims that he's a psychopath because he kills a bunch of animals and stuff, and you're thinking to yourself, okay, this is like another Michael Myers situation. He's a psychopath. And then there's this woman who's in the same grade as him, and she basically tells him off, and he's just like, no, you F off. And, they kind of form this relationship, then stuff happens. And so it's almost like a very weird, effed up love story that's also really likable and charming. It's a really interesting mix, but I really enjoyed End of the Fucking World Season 1 on Netflix, so I recommend that. And then I actually saw Early Man as well. What an interesting journey that was. So, as you guys know, I don't have a car, and so I could take an Uber like a normal person, but I pride myself in walking, and I know my girlfriend gets frustrated when I tell her that I'm going to walk miles upon miles to catch 1 hour-and-a-half movie, but that's what I did. So I left my house at 7:50 in the morning to catch a 10:45 showing, and I didn't get home until almost 3 p.m. The movie theater was, oh man, because I take the train, I got off the station, it was still 2 miles away, so, it was a terrible journey because it was rainy and muddy, and it was not fun, especially since the movie was kind of blah. And so I'm like, well, that wasn't really worth it, but it is Aardman, and I will still support them. So yeah, that's what I did yesterday, and of course I saw Black Panther this morning. So I just got back from that. So I'm ready to kind of talk about that. But we got to talk about some other stuff first. So Joel, are you ready for that sweet, beautiful, luscious movie news?
Well, when you describe it that way, no, I'm not.
Absolutely not. Okay, well, this was kind of like not a slowish week, but just more of like just announcements of certain directors or actors being attached to stuff, and that's always fun. Which is actually, I'm not even joking, that's actually all of our news stories. It's either actors joining on a project or directors joining in on a project. So let's go ahead and start breaking some down. So the first one is that good old Michael Fassbender. I've always really enjoyed him, except for that wonderful masterpiece of a film, The Snowman, last year, which Joel and I still have vivid nightmares over. I've always appreciated his work ever since I saw him in Shame in 2011. I was completely just blown away, and I told myself, listen, no matter what this guy does, I will always support him, even if it is a humongous letdown like The Snowman. Well, he is being attached to star in a Kung Fury full-length feature film, which is based on the 30-minute-ish short film that was released on YouTube was it last year, Joel, or was it 2 years ago?
I have no idea. I never saw it.
Okay, well, It was a short film that basically was an homage to 80s films. It was kind of retro, kind of grindhouse-ish. I couldn't really tell what the story was about because it was a long time ago since I've seen it, but I remember it being visually striking for being a short film on YouTube. So Michael Fassbender is being attached, and it's going to be directed by David Sandberg, who was the director of Lights Out and Annabelle Creation, which I didn't really care for Lights Out because I thought the whole ending of that movie just completely unraveled that movie in the worst way possible. But Annabelle Creation was a really well done prequel that I had a very good time watching. It was a month before it came out, so it was a nice little horror block right there for the 4 weeks. So with Michael Fassbender enjoying, I'm actually somewhat curious. But here's the kicker, Joel. You know how like when you hear like an actor joining a project, you're like, I like this. This has potential. But then you hear about supporting cast members, and you're like, why? What were they smoking? Did someone get hit in the head with a rock? All right, so another person is being attached to this. And it's Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I'm like, okay, so we have the director of Annabelle Creation directing probably one of the best actors in the business right now, being alongside the guy that was pregnant in the movie. Like, I just, what a weird combo. As far as this one being in like a full-length feature film, I'm gonna be honest with you. I think it's bad, just because the short film itself, like I said, it kind of reeks of like this grindhouse type of 80s retro effect, and it works well for the internet. I don't think it's gonna work well for a full-length feature. It's kind of like how I felt about I loved this movie. Actually, I loved the whole experience. It was Grindhouse back in 2007. But that whole experience does not work in a full-length feature film format, just because people are not into that stuff anymore. And I don't think this is going to work. But if you're going to attach Fassbender to us, I'm all down for it. And I'm curious to see if Schwarzenegger can, I don't know, keep it going. I don't know. I mean, I like the man, but like he's no Michael Fassbender. So Joel, not seeing the original source material, just hearing what this movie's kind of like aesthetic-wise and who's attached to it, does this pique your interest?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to have any feelings just because I haven't seen the short and I don't know what it was about. It's an interesting pairing. Certainly, I never thought that I would see Fassbender and Schwarzenegger be in a movie together. But I've been a fan of Fassbender since Hunger. Hunger, and I saw Hunger and Inglourious Basterds like right by each other, kind of chronologically speaking, and so I was kind of introduced to him before he really kind of broke out, and he's great in both of those. And then 2011 happened, and he came out strong with a lot of movies that were really good and performances that were terrific, and he's certainly a really good actor, with the right material. I like Schwarzenegger a lot. I find it funny that you described him that way with that particular movie. I mean, it's certainly an odd role, but Terminator will always kind of be a part of me. Terminator 2 was the first R-rated movie I ever watched at the age of 7 or 8. And I think that he's a terrific actor, again, given the right material, just like pretty much any actor, according to my personal rule.
And maybe I was just a little too harsh. Like, I know I did that junior jab at him, but, with this style of, like, retro 80s setting, like, it could work. Like, you're right. If Schwarzenegger is given the right material, I think he could succeed. So I guess now that I think about it, maybe Fassbender's the odd one out because this isn't really his style.
Yeah, see, that's what I was thinking.
Okay.
Like, whenever you were describing it, I was like, wait, so
maybe I'm
saying Fassbender. Yeah, it's like, so this is exactly the kind of thing that Schwarzenegger would do. So I wasn't surprised at all. In fact, I was surprised that Fassbender got announced first. I thought that they would lead out,
right.
or lead in with Schwarzenegger being the thing. I guess it's just like when the deals happen, maybe, Schwarzenegger's happened a day after Fassbender's was finalized or something. I don't know, but usually it comes about unless they want to specifically, conceal something about a movie's cast. They usually will announce actors, in the order of their deals sometimes, and so that's what I was surprised that Fassbender was the first one to be announced for this, because it just, knowing the vague things I know about the short, it didn't seem like it was his thing. And the short is very divisive. There's a lot of people who don't like it, because a lot of people don't like 80s nostalgia. But the people who like it seem to have a lot of fun with it. So it's interesting. I'll certainly catch up with it in time for whatever this turns out to be. But right now I don't really have any feelings. I haven't seen the short. I like these actors, but it's a weird pairing, and I just don't know anything about the characters they're playing. So kind of hard to say anything concrete.
Yeah, and I apologize. I should have read this and memorized it, but it's actually David Sandberg's short film. I didn't realize he was the one behind it.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize. See, for some reason, I thought the only thing that he did was actually he directed the thing that inspired Get Out.
Yeah,
I mean, Get Out, Lights Out.
Oh God,
Wow.
Lights Out. Yeah,
Lights Out.
No, so that makes a whole lot more sense, and also the producers behind it are producing this. Okay. So, and once again, it's an homage to 1980s martial arts and police films. It's going to be cheesy as hell. I don't understand
what they need to do. And I'm actually going to go look up his name right now. And I'm hoping that people who are listening recognize this name, but they need to cast someone in this. Technically not a 1980s movie, but it's in a 1980s style. They need to cast Robert Z'Dar, who was the star of Samurai Cop.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. I couldn't remember any names from that movie, but I was thinking in the style of Samurai Cop.
Yeah, I mean, they have the there's a Samurai. Oops. Sorry, guys, a live show, and I'm. I mean, come on, they're making this sequel, or they made this this third movie in the series. I'm sorry, no, it's not him. It's Matthew Corradus. That's who I meant. Main guy from Samurai Cop. I think Robert Z'Dar was the villain. In any case, Tommy Wiseau was in the most recent Samurai Cop movie. He was he was in that. I mean, it's just like, they need to do this. They need to get the actors from these movies to kind of like, there's this thing where Tommy Wiseau wants to be the Joker. And I would love for that to happen, because he's got that voice where you don't know where he comes from, and you can't know where the Joker comes from. It takes away from the character. So, yeah, I just want that kind of thing to happen. So if they're making this and it's like this homage to 80s style cop movies, then they need to get the stars of those things to the really bad ones to come in and be a part of it. Anyway, of course, it's my dream to have a bunch of the, like, all of those not disgraced actors, but sort of people who tried acting and it didn't really work out, and they became cult, uh, figures, all to be in like one movie. And Kung Fury seems to be the kind of movie where that could work. So they need to get, Matthew Karedas and, bring in Lorenzo Lamas and all of those people to do this. It would be a lot of fun, I think. But
well, it's a very WTF story, and it's not as WTF as the next one. Listen, I love my boy Jason Blum, but man, he be smoking some dank kush because I don't know what he's thinking. Listen, I like the fact that he's going to tackle this, but why would you bring the guy that directed Pixels is completely baffling to me. All right, so Christopher Columbus, not the rapist murderist from back in the day, that good old gentleman. No, this is Chris Columbus, director of such hit films as the first two Harry Potter films and most recently Pixels. He is being tapped to direct the Five Nights at Freddy's adaptation. It's going to be from Blumhouse, my boy Jason Blum. Which, by the way, just a little side note, I know Joel saw it earlier this week, but Jason Blum was on the same round table as Ridley Scott. Let that sink in. No, anyways, so Blumhouse is going to be adapting this. Now, if you don't know what this is, it's a game where you sit in the corner of an office and you will have two doors on each side of you, and they will both be open. Now, the point is you can't close both at the same time. You have to close one at one time, and you might have like some minor weaponry or whatever. I haven't played it in a while, but I remember like that's the basis of it. So you'll have both doors open, and you can only close one at a time because you kind of work in this Chuck E. Cheese type of place where the animatronics on the stage will come to life at night and terrorize you. Now, if you hear them coming down the hallway, you have to close the door. If you don't do it in time, you close the wrong door and you flip your character around, the animatronic will literally leap in your face and scare the hell out of you, and then you lose the game. So turning that into a movie, I'm totally fine with, because it's, first of all, it's Blumhouse. If he can turn a Truth or Dare game into a movie, he can do anything. And the Ouija game.
We haven't actually seen that yet, so
true.
Maybe he can't.
True, but then again, I'm just saying, like, even if it's good or bad, like he still took that minute idea into a movie, and so, I mean, the Chucky movies exist. You can make this work. I'm actually curious to see what they would do with it. Now, it's probably just going to be a basic story of people getting trapped in a Chuck E. Cheese or a Freddy's and being terrorized by animatronics. And I'm totally fine with that because I'm psychotic and I like these crazy out-of-the-box ideas. Now, Christopher Columbus directing it, yes, the guy has had some successful hits on his hands. It's not just the Harry Potter movies or Pixels. He is behind Gremlins, correct?
Yeah, he wrote that.
Yeah, so I mean, like, he's done some, films in this genre in the 80s, and, maybe he had a great idea to pitch to him, but as far as, like, what you've done for me last type of neighborhood we are in with Hollywood, what he did for us last was Pixels, and I did not like Pixels, so... But then again, Jason Blum's about hiring for the cheap. So idea, sure. Director, little hesitant on. How do you approach this, Joel, as a person that goes to Chuck E. Cheese on the reg, and you always tell me that your favorite part about going to Chuck E. Cheese by yourself in a trench coat is talking to the animatronics, and so I think you might like this idea.
What a fascinating attempt to give insight into my life. He's got it exactly right. I do that. No, I'm just kidding. So, no. This is another one where it's kind of hard. I've never played the game. The concept doesn't really sound very appealing to me.
It's very, very generic.
At least, I mean, it sounds vaguely appealing as a game, just not as a movie. Chris Columbus, of course, he was responsible for a lot of the movies that formed my childhood. not just Harry Potter because that was sort of later childhood for me, but he directed Mrs. Doubtfire, he directed Bicentennial Man, um, and there were other movies obviously that he made, you know, Home Alone and all that. But I guess the what he directed last ideas kind of. I guess it makes sense, and certainly Pixels was horrific. I hate that movie with a passion. Um, but I don't know. I mean, I don't. I like to take pretty much every movie as a vacuum. My rule is that just because a director's involved doesn't really necessarily dictate obvious quality. I've learned from that lesson before in the hard way, and it's certainly his last movie was bad, but that doesn't mean that this one will be bad. But it's weird. It's a weird pairing of director and material because I don't think he's ever done anything like this behind the director's chair. And that's certainly important. I guess he saw something in it and was like, "Hey, I can do this." Which I guess if he has that confidence, then let him do it. But I don't really have any feelings. It's another thing like Kung Fury where I'm just not familiar with the source material, so not really. I don't really go either way on this. Anticipation or dread.
I think now that I think about it, I know he didn't direct Gremlins, but he was still a part of the creative team behind it, and I'm wondering if he went to Blum or Blum went to him, and they pitched the idea of making a, old school animatronic, like creepy animatronic movie, kind of like with Gremlins and how their creatures worked, and just make it more terrifying. And I'm wondering if that's what they discussed.
I know that he was a big proponent on the Harry Potter set of, and he didn't need to be, even if it was 2000 and 2001 when he was making the first two. That he was a big proponent of practical effects. Using them where he could, even if he was marrying practical with CGI. He always had like the troll in the first one. There was something big there that was sizable and interacting with the kids on some level. And then what we were seeing was CGI, but there was a lot of practical stuff put into that. And so certainly, if there's something like that, I'm all for it because, practical effects today are, not very common. And
I know
obvious.
You didn't really care for this movie, but Krampus had really good practical effects.
No, I love Krampus.
Oh, who was I talking to that said they hated it?
I have no idea.
Oh,
I don't think we've ever talked about Krampus, but yes, certainly that one. Yeah, that kind of thing. If they were to do that, that would be a lot of fun. If they took that approach to it, the Krampus monster, kind of give it that kind of a feel. Yeah, that could work for sure. But yeah, I don't really have any huge feelings. I'm not familiar. Before I knew that this was coming out, it was announced like a year ago or something. I think we actually talked about it on the show.
Yeah.
I just wasn't even aware that it existed. Like, I think I'd read the name somewhere, but is it a PC game?
Yeah. It kind of came out around the same time as the Slender Man game, and they were both PC type of games.
Oh, okay, that's why then, because I'm just not familiar.
Gotcha.
So
which is ironic because you are very familiar with this next story, and I'm gonna let you take it because I know nothing about it.
Right. So this was kind of a surprise because of, I guess it's just Gene Wilder is gone now, and so they don't feel the need, particularly because he was not pleased with Johnny Depp's take on Willy Wonka, even though it wasn't a direct remake of that movie. He was not pleased with that, and he was vocal about that hatred of his movie of that movie. I feel like this news is coming out because they've, made movements to do this since his death. But they are rebooting the Willy Wonka franchise. I don't know if this is going to be a direct remake. Sometimes that's what it means. Sometimes it isn't. But in any case, they are talking to Paul King to direct uh, the the reboot of this. I don't know if it's going to be is it going to be the first of several? I can't remember. Anyway, I would assume not because I don't think that there are many stories with Willy Wonka. But yeah, Paul King directed the Paddington movies, and he got a lot of critical acclaim for both of those. And they're both really delightful. He directs sort of in the style of, if Wes Anderson kind of suddenly made a bunch of kids movies, that's Paul King. He directs with a similar eye for symmetry in his shots, a similar kind of he's a little more idealistic than Anderson's movies, especially something like The Grand Budapest Hotel, which is one of the most nihilistic movies in a while, kind of sneakily. So he's not as excuse me, he's not as sort of downtrodden as some of Anderson's movies, but he directs in that style that has an eye for symmetry and for a lot of very beautiful production design and kind of tracking along sideways with characters and all of that. It's very Wes Anderson without feeling like it's just stealing from his style. And so I think that this is actually a really good pairing of director and material. There's, obviously Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, written by Roald Dahl. That kind of material is sort of similar to Paddington. There's a lot of very clear messages, but a lot of characters who are likable and, clear, conniving villains sometimes. Certainly the worldview of a Dahl book is simple, but, it seems to connect with the audiences a lot. And Paul King is the director of a series of two movies that do the same thing or a very similar thing. And I think that this is a really, really good pairing of director and star, and material, and I'm certainly curious to see who they find to play Willy Wonka, because we had Gene Wilder's take, which is amazing. That's one of my favorite performances ever. And then we had Johnny Depp's, I think somebody once described it as the cross between Michael Jackson, Marilyn Manson, and Carol Burnett, which is everything pretty much that describes that performance, including everything that's wrong with it. I think the movie is okay. I do not like Johnny Depp in the movie. So it'll be interesting to see who they get for this third take, the third live action take of this character. Because I'm excited. Even if I'm hesitant about them remaking this or rebooting it or whatever. Obviously it's for me it's sacred material. Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory is one of my all-time favorite movies. I love everything about that movie. It still holds up today. So I'm hesitant about that, but if they were to get a director for this, I don't think that they could do anyone better than Paul King, even if Paddington's not made a whole lot of money in the States. Certainly they're looking at the worldwide numbers for those movies, which are a lot higher, and they're going with that as their basis to hire him, and I think it's perfect. So I know that you haven't seen the Paddington movies yet. I know that you plan to later this year, but anyway, have I sold you on this idea?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I joked about it, and I said I'll watch Paddington and Paddington 2 on my deathbed, but I know Joel's going to take a whip to my back, and he's going to make sure I watch it by the end of the year. So I will watch it eventually. But watching the trailers to Paddington 1 and Paddington 2, I get a sense of how his directorial style is. It's like you said. It's like the style of a Wes Anderson, while not really ripping off Wes Anderson, more just being his own take on that, and it's still his own certain vibrancy and cinematography that just makes those movies look wonderful and just delightful. And that's a huge compliment. And that's just coming from the 2.5-minute trailer. So Just from the trailers and what I've heard from Paddington, how the movies function, I think this is a wonderful pick because Willy Wonka does capture that delightful innocence of, child wonderment, and I think if you can bring the Paddington style into that, I think it can bode well for him. And those movies get such critical acclaim, it kind of makes me angry that people that are associated with movie don't get as much recognition. So I'm glad that he's crossing over into an American-based film, an American release film, to get his name out there. Maybe people will go watch Paddington 1 and Paddington 2 more, just before I'm looking at the critical reception and how well it does overseas. It's like I'm just surprised it has not struck a chord over here. So, hopefully this will do that for him, and I'm cool with it. It doesn't seem like he is a bad pick for it, which is great. So the next story, though, speaking of picks being put together to hopefully form, I guess, comedic gold. Okay, so I don't think this has ever happened, and if it has, then it's been a while, to where we have an actress who exploded onto the scene for a supporting role in a comedy is going to be starring with a person who exploded onto the scene in a supporting role in a comedy. Now they're going to headline together, so that is cool, I guess. But I haven't seen the said certain movie with person in it, and I'll explain in just a minute. But Melissa McCarthy and Tiffany Haddish are going to be in New Line Cinema's The Kitchen. This just reading it it's just hilarious. So it's written by the person that did Straight Outta Compton, and it's from a director who's making her directorial debut. Basically, it's like a mob drama with these two taking the lead. Okay. Like I said, when you have two actresses that pretty much come onto the scene in like comedic supporting roles, I'm sure it'll be fascinating to see them tackle on a drama, especially with Tiffany Haddish so quickly. Usually when people explode in movies, their agents want to exploit them as much as possible in comedies until basically people get tired of them. Melissa McCarthy to some extent. So it's interesting that she's taken the faster route to more dramas and Melissa McCarthy's taken the later route. But I mean, hey, if you're written by the person that wrote Straight Outta Compton, with this type of, story, I mean, it's set in the 70s and it's an Irish mafia story. Sure. I mean, it's going to be a straight drama, so I want to get Joel's take on this first. Joel, can you make some sense into this?
Well, it's my opinion that there are few better dramatic actors than comedians.
That's true.
So,
I will give you that. True.
Yeah, because without that mindset, we wouldn't have The Truman Show or Good Will Hunting, or any other number of dramas that happen to star comedians. And it's because they have such range. They're able to play stuff straight, which helps when they actually have to play stuff straight. And this is going to be one of those situations where you could imagine like this alternate universe where they're in a mob comedy, and they're playing maybe these same characters. So they're probably going to, approach it like that, in that, if they were in a mob comedy and they were having to play stuff straight, they just play that all the time because they have such range to do that. And I haven't seen Tiffany Haddish in anything. I still haven't watched Girls Trip.
I haven't either. That was the movie I was about to bring up. I had not seen her in her breakout role.
Right, yeah. It was one of those things where like that weekend was all about Dunkirk and a ghost story, and then there was – and honestly, I thought that Girls Trip looked really bad. I think we even talked about the trailer.
Yeah.
On the show, and obviously I don't put any stock in any of this stuff, but it does sort of subconsciously cause me to prioritize things, and I didn't prioritize Girls Trip, and it's just gotten away from me. But we have multiple copies at work that I can rent. I need to do that.
You have no excuse, Joel. No excuse.
Right, and it's interesting because this is probably not going to be the first drama for her because she's going to be doing PTA's next movie,
Yeah.
and potentially with Timothy Chalamet, although we don't know if those are agreements that are finalized. But we know that she's going to be doing PTA's next movie. So if he decides to write her into a drama, then that's what we're looking at. And it may be that out of nowhere she kind of minds this career as a dramatic actress after blowing up in a comedic role. That sometimes happens, but certainly it's an interesting pairing. I like McCarthy. I think that you're right. She's a bit oversaturated. In the market, she plays a lot of the same kinds of roles. We're about to actually talk about one.
Exactly. That's what I was just about to say. We are about to talk about the saturation issue that we're discussing.
Yeah, but there is, the idea that she's kind of done this for herself. It hasn't
True.
been an agent. I think that she's kind of taken her own agency, even if she has agents. She has her own agency there. She's she's choosing these roles because they're the ones that kind of tickle her fancy, and she wants to do them, and they just happen to kind of be some of the same roles, and it's probably just because that's what she found, she kind of relates to best in terms of being an actress. And now we've got her.
That's true because she works a lot with her husband, and so she's choosing to do these roles.
Yeah,
for,
yeah. I
those
mean,
types of movies.
Yeah, and so clearly it's for the reason that she likes doing that,
Yeah.
and so perhaps it isn't pigeonholing by an industry. It's just her choosing to do those roles, and they just happen to be the same ones. And that happens sometimes. Jim Carrey, when he was a comedian, he chose a lot of the same roles,
Correct.
before the 2000s. So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It's an interesting pairing of actors and tone because this is going to be a straight mob drama. But I'm excited to see Andrea Berloff, have her debut. That's very interesting that this will be that 70s mob drama,
Right.
In the 90s this would be directed by Martin Scorsese. So it'll be interesting for sure. I wish I had more thoughts about Haddish. I mean, I've seen the clips of her in the movie, and she certainly looks like one of the best parts of it in Girls Trip, I should say. And she's been funny, and she was hilarious at the Oscars announcement, and she's been really funny in things that I've seen her in, but I haven't seen her in a movie yet, so I gotta do that. I certainly won't see her in the movie that we're going to be talking about, where she's in it.
No.
Yeah. Oh boy.
No, it's one of those weird things because Melissa McCarthy took the opposite route where she oversaturated herself in those goofy slapstick comedy roles. And then Tiffany Haddish is doing the opposite, where she's starting to do more dramas than comedies. Now, she is going to be coming out with one called, I believe, School Night with Kevin Hart and all that stuff. So she's going to go back to her comedic roots with a couple here and there. But it seems like she's doing the opposite route, where she's got this fame now, and she could do whatever she wants with it, and she's choosing to do more. More unique roles or more dramatic roles, and I admire that about her. So I guess she wants to, tickle her dramatic side, and there's nothing wrong with that. But we will have to see how this one plays out. Another one that I'm interested in seeing is that Tessa Thompson. She, blew up in Creed with her little supporting role, and then she was really good in Westworld. Check that out, everyone, if you haven't. It's on HBO. Season 2 is coming very soon. And she was also in Thor Ragnarok last year. She is just one of these actresses that will stay in the game, as long as she wants to stay in it. Her next role that she's set to star in is, I think, the one that will really test her in terms of her acting abilities. I'm not saying she's a terrible actress, but this one will all be put on her shoulders, and I love that. I like the fact that she's getting a main role now, and we'll finally get to see her utilize her talents in every way, shape, and form. Now, she's going to be starring as Doris Payne in a jewelry heist movie based on this person's life. Now, if you don't know who Doris is, basically she was notorious for these jewelry heists that she would do from stores all around the world. And it says here that her criminal record dates back to the 50s. So like this woman has done it all in terms of crimes with the in the heist market. So I want to see this. I like a good heist film, and I guess if you can add this type of real life story to it, and you add someone who's an up and coming actress that's really getting her name out there, I'm totally cool with this. This sounds really, really awesome. And it says here, Doris Payne is 87 years old now, so she was doing this for definitely a long period of her life. So I'm wondering, what they're gonna kind of do in terms of what they're gonna focus on, whether they're gonna, do earlier stuff or the middle of her life, or what they're gonna do. But they're gonna try to. The producers said they're gonna do it in the vein of like Catch Me If You Can and the Thomas Crown Affair. And I like this little bit of news. So Joel, after seeing Tessa in your favorite film in 2015, Creed, and one of your other favorites from last year did make top 10, but you still enjoyed it, from Thor Ragnarok, are you excited to see her kind of spread her wings a little bit and take on a lead role?
Well, I first noticed her in Dear White People.
That too. Yeah, I forgot she was in
I don't know if she was in the show because I haven't watched the show. I need to. But the movie was terrific, and she was great in it. But she was part of an ensemble there. She was just, part of an ensemble in Thor. She's supporting character in Creed, and certainly this is going to set her front and center in a role, and that's really exciting. And I don't know if she has had one of those. Certainly she won't have had one of those on this scale. So that's exciting. She's a really good actress, and I'm excited. The story sounds fascinating. Doris Payne sounds like going to be a very interesting story.
She sounds like a very crafty individual.
yeah, exactly. And I have to wonder how much involvement she had in the project, and whether or not Tessa Thompson met with her and all that. It would be very interesting to find out. But yeah, I'm certainly excited to see this. Very very promising future for Miss Thompson.
Oh yeah, I mean, ever since I saw her in Creed, and she's barely even in Creed, but those like few scenes that she had with Michael B. Jordan, they were really powerful stuff because it was all about the tension in the relationship, and I thought she sold it really well. So can't wait to see that too. It sounds like most of these news stories are very good, including this last one, which I'm super excited for because I really enjoyed The Witch, or as most people call it, the V-Itch. The double V itch. All right, so Robert Eggers.
The double V itch.
Double V itch. That sounds like a sexual disease. All right, so the director of The Witch, Robert Eggers, is going to keep doing horror films for a little bit. I'm assuming to establish his name, and he might venture off to do other things. But this one, this newest one he's going to do is called The Lighthouse. It comes out next year, and it's about the story of an aging lighthouse keeper named Old who lives in early 20th century Maine, and it'll probably have the same slow burn effect as The Witch did. Now, Willem Dafoe is already in this movie, and of course, it's Willem freaking Dafoe. I don't need to say anything more. Now, they have added a new person to the cast, and that would be none other than Mr. Edward Cullen Sparkley himself, Robert Pattinson. And I need to stop. I need to stop calling him that because him and Kristen are actually good, and Taylor Lautner is selling tacos somewhere in a taco truck.
6 years later.
I know. We got to drop it at some point. But Robert Pattinson has always been one of these actors to where even beyond his Twilight career, the guy just always crushes it in every single drama that he does. And Joel and I really enjoyed his last one last year with Good Time, done by the Sadfi brothers, and he was really excellent in that movie. To where when you see Good Time, if you were ever skeptical on Robert P. From Twilight, just watch Good Time, and I think you'll just be switched automatically to, oh wow, this guy has potential. Because one, I didn't see Robert Pattinson in that movie. I saw this guy that was just trying to get his brother out of jail, and it was this kind of subtle explosive. It was a little bit of both. It was subtle and explosive, and he completely just nailed it. So when you add him to not only a movie with the follow-up of the director of The Witch and Willem Dafoe, I'm totally down for this. Now, Joel, correct me if I'm wrong. I know we've discussed The Witch. Are you the one that said that you didn't really care for it, or am I once again thinking of someone else?
Maybe I'm not at it's the best movie of the year stature that a lot of people were. I like it though. I thought it was really atmospheric, and I like the first half better than the second half. Let's just say that.
Okay, so you were the person I talked to then, because
I don't know. I mean, maybe, but I certainly gave it a high B.
Oh, okay. So I mean, because I've met some people that just didn't like the pace of it and the kind of deliberate, like, you know, kind of moving along like a snail type of pace, and I really enjoyed it because, like you said, the atmosphere is what really sold that movie, and that's what actually keeps your interest going. And if he can nail the same type of atmosphere that he did with that one, with this one, with, you know, the whole 20th century vibe, then this could turn out to be a nice little haunted lighthouse movie. So I really like this. It'd be
really funny if it has a completely different vibe.
Right?
Like if he decided to, you know, continue directing these, but not ever make the same kind of horror movie, that would be really funny. But obviously, the likelihood is that it will be sort of in that vein.
So I mean,
particularly considering it's about characters. Assuming Pattinson is with Dafoe in this lighthouse,
correct.
You know, it's going to be about isolated characters, so it's probably going to have that. I can imagine it's going to become another chamber drama of a sort, which was sort of my problem with The Witch. Or, you know, as much as I appreciated it, that was sort of my problem. But he's probably most likely filmmaking. His filmmaking is of a particular kind, and that's certainly exciting to see that it could take shape into something with bigger actors, because, you know, The Witch kind of made Anya Taylor-Joy into, you know, the somewhat not household name, but certainly put her on the map. Yeah. You know, alongside Morgan and Split at the same time. But, you know, certainly this one will be working with a bit more established actors that we recognize. So I'm excited to see this.
Did you comment on Robert Pattinson?
Yeah. So here's the thing. I mean,
there's the big old butt from Joel. There it is.
I didn't mind him in the Twilight movies. Those movies had other problems.
Yeah, I always I know I make fun of them for that, but he's right. It's not their fault that they're in that.
But here's the thing with those. The reason that their performances, I think, were so kind of unwieldy, his and Kristen Stewart's, is because they didn't like the material. They were not fans of being on set, so there wasn't really a reason for them to try to commit so much. Particularly considering they were working with, you know, a studio project. There's a lot of mandates there. They were working with characters they didn't like. I know that it was probably not a very pleasant time on set, at least for the sequels. And so I thought that, you know, they did what they could with the characters as written. We could talk about Taylor Lautner another day. That's a different story.
I think he's a woodsman somewhere. He's living in the woods somewhere.
He's like a convenience store clerk in Upper Oregon. I don't know.
He probably is.
No. You know what? We're being too harsh on him too. Let's hope for some sort of role where he proves himself like this. And maybe not things where he's like doing, you know, Adam Sandler movies.
That too.
Yeah. Because whatever the Ridiculous Six was, it was ridiculous. It was ridiculous. In any case, yeah, Robert Pattinson, great actor after the Twilight thing ended. And he's been taking one interesting role after another. And if you don't think, like, if you've seen both of them and you don't think that his and Kristen Stewart's performance in Personal Shopper were two of the best performances last year, just just don't. I'm just kidding. But yeah, I think that he's been taking his career in very interesting directions. He was also terrific in The Lost City of Z last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that you didn't see that ideally, but trust me on this. He's terrific in that movie. He was great in The Rover a few years ago. A movie that I like a lot. People don't, but I do, and I thought that he was terrific. And you could name the roles all day. He's a really good actor, and this is another director who can kind of stretch his talents. And I know that he wants to do that. He's kind of been vocal about the fact that he loves work and he loves challenging roles. And so yeah, I mean, it's certainly Lost City of Z was that because of where they filmed and for how long. And Good Time, I'm sure, was a challenge because of how small the production was. I know that the shooting process was apparently wildly different to anything else he had ever done. He's commented on that before, and so yeah, I'm excited to see Robert Eggers do something because The Witch was a considerable achievement directorially. In terms of the
It
vision
did well
that
in
he
the
had.
box office too.
It did well in the box
Yeah.
office. Clearly, people connected with it despite the fact that it was, you know, early modern English, and it was a very niche kind of horror vibe that people aren't really accustomed to in the mainstream. It did well at the box office, and I was happy to see that. And so yeah, I'm excited to see a follow up.
Yeah, I mean, there's really nothing more to say. It's just, believe it or not, I actually think all these news stories are
Yeah,
fantastic.
I can't really pick a favorite. I mean, I guess I would sort of count out the first two just because I'm not familiar with the source material, but it doesn't mean I'm not excited for them.
Yeah.
It just means I don't have any feelings. I'd probably say maybe that the Willy Wonka thing, it might be my favorite, but the last four are all really promising. So it's
My favorite's
kind of a
actually
toss-up.
the McCarthy Haddish story.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's totally understandable. It's those four stories are all kind of tied. So
It's good stuff, and we're going to keep the ball rolling with let's just say an interesting batch of trailers. So moving on to the trailer section, guys. Please, but before that, please let us know what was your favorite news story and all the trailers that we're about to talk about right now. We're starting with the most absurd and probably the most hilarious thing I've seen all week, and I don't care what Joel says. From the director of Drumline and Mr. 3000 comes a movie that looks so idiotic and so dumb that I actually cracked a smile several times. This one is called Uncle Drew. It's
I
based
love
off
how you're
of,
laughing just at the name. Okay.
it's based off of a character from a Pepsi ad, and so basically this old man comes back to his hometown to enter in a street ball tournament, and the cast includes Tiffany Haddish, Nick Kroll, Shaquille O'Neal, and Rod from Get Out himself, Little Rel Howery.
And a bunch of NBA stars.
And a
Like
bunch of
the-
NBA stars.
Yeah, the names of those people, the reason that they gave them is because they're NBA stars. This
Oh
is
my
this is
God.
this is like they put, this is like straight from the 90s when they were trying to make, Shaquille O'Neal and Michael Jordan stars.
I know. It's just incredible. I will say this. It reminds me so much. It's probably the worst compliment to give it, but whatever. Of a Tyler Perry movie. But you know what? I liked it. I liked the trailer. It was ridiculous. It looks like it could be at least a decent time at the theaters. Like maybe some entertainment value to be had. Yeah, I want to see first of all, Lil Rel Howery to do more because I liked his little side role in Get Out. Joel made the argument for a good straight year that he should, he was in his supporting actor category because he was just that good. He was like the best comedic relief in that entire movie. And of course, I love Nick Kroll. Don't know how Tiffany Haddish. I've actually seen more films acted in with Shaq than Tiffany Haddish. I want you to put in that perspective. Well, and Shaq's name in this is Big Fella, so yeah. There's really nothing more to say. It is a goofy concept of a comedy. The main actor is in old makeup, so it makes it even more ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't look like it's, anything like that's going to be, it's going to go down as a classic, a masterpiece. It's like, no, it's there. It's going to be there. You're going to watch it for an hour and a half and leave and go, that was either good or bad. But for me, the trailer worked. I want to get Joel's take on this. When you clicked play on that trailer, were you just appalled in a disgusting way, or like appalled because you're like, I wish it was June because I want to watch this right now?
Well, I don't know if that's possible. I was baffled the whole way through.
Baffled in a good or bad way? We have to get down to the bottom of this.
That's a really good existential question. You should ask it to me when I'm dead in heaven. That's the only way I would know. I'm just kidding. So, yeah, I have so many feelings about this, but I don't know what they are, and I don't know how to elucidate them properly for an audience. It looks goofy and silly and like a waste of time, and I want to see it.
Exactly. It's like it looks like a complete waste, but I want to see it.
And yet, I don't know if I want to see it in theaters. I might rent it.
That's true. It is more of a rental trailer.
However, I will say this. So you said, I didn't even realize this. I did not realize that the character was based on a Pepsi ad. So let's say that this kind of breaks out, right? What if this becomes the new Ernest P. Worrell?
Oh no.
That would be so awesome because we need one. I feel like the world, the universe, the galaxy of universes has been missing another Ernest P. Worrell series. And so if this can be good and we can have a series of wacky adventures with Uncle Drew.
A series of Uncle Drews.
Yeah, like Uncle Drew Scared Stupid. Uncle Drew Saves Christmas. God. Uncle Drew goes to jail? Well, that would be awkward. But yeah,
oh man.
Yeah, that would be very interesting. And I'm curious to find out how they sold the idea of having a bunch of NBA stars in the same movie. I mean, I just watched just the other day the movie The Female Brain with Whitney Cummings, and Blake Griffin's in it. And he's an NBA star playing an NBA star who hurts his leg, and he's really, really good in the movie. He is terrific. It's actually almost on Lil Rel Howery and Get Out levels. In terms of the performance, he is actually the funniest person in the movie, and it's a movie filled with comedians. So certainly there's an idea that that this can happen and work. And I mean, I guess tracking back Shaq's career, he certainly commits to whatever stupid thing that the movie gives him to do. Whether it be a rapping genie or peeing in a was it him who peed? I think it was him who peed in the pool, right?
Yeah.
In Grown Ups, yeah.
Unfortunately.
Well, actually, I wouldn't say unfortunately because I like both of those movies, but yeah, it's very interesting. Although I think that I really think that a studio needs to pay attention to Roger Ebert, who once said about Shaquille O'Neal that somebody needs to just cast him as a guy, not a big guy, and literally not, a character named Big Fella, because that's a little on the nose. But just cast him as a guy. Danny DeVito doesn't play small guys; he plays guys. So if you cast Shaquille O'Neal as just a random guy, I think it could work. Here, though, I mean, he looks like he's having a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I know that I'm constantly contradicting myself in all of my points here, but that's just how I feel about this. I don't know how to feel about this. See, there was a contradiction.
We won't know until we actually see it. But as far as
Exactly.
the representation of its goofiness, it completely nails it. This basically is telling you, don't take this seriously. I just want you to have a good time. And you know what?
Yeah, and it's also sort of telling us don't be surprised if I'm awful.
Oh yeah, exactly.
But
Which
I
I'm
mean,
fine
because
with.
it could very well be completely awful. But it could be one of those things that's fascinatingly awful.
Mm-hmm.
to such a degree that you kind of almost have fun with it. Sort of like Norbit. I know a lot of people hate Norbit. For some reason, I can't hate Norbit because it's just fascinating to watch. Everything that is so misguided about that movie actually happened in a movie. And, this will obviously play for a similar demographic, I think. Comedy with a lot of black actors in it. So, in any case, weird, what, WTF, OMG, all of the other things.
Which I'm totally fine with. And that's why I opened up the trailer section with this trailer, because it caught me off guard, because I knew it was coming, because I read when Joel and I were doing our prep work for the anticipation episode for this year, back in January, I came across this and I was like, this sounds like it could be pretty fun. And I was wondering when a trailer would drop for it, and well, bam, a month later, here we are. And it's just, it was glorious to see. And also another trailer that was glorious to see. Joel, this one kind of dropped during the Olympics. What was it, and why are you so excited for it? Because I know it's one of your most anticipated for the year.
Yeah, and it kind of furthered that with this trailer. I think it looks incredibly and really, really good. So it's Incredibles 2. And this one seems it looks like it's been wow, I just forgot the word that I was going to say. Described to be, which is taking place right after the first one ended. And it looks to be a little more family oriented, and by that I mean kind of exploring these ideas of family in the movie. You get everybody who's back, and the plot seems to be a little less about a big maniacal villain than the first one was. And I'm really interested to see how we don't really actually know what the villain's up to here, do we?
Not really. They keep everything pretty close to the vest in this trailer.
They do. I mean, you kind of get hints at the villain, and we know who's he voiced by. It's
wait, did you say who?
Who voices the villain? It's on the tip of my brain.
Oh, are you talking about from the last movie?
No, from this one. The main villain. Do you know who it is? Because I recognize. Oh, Bob Odenkirk.
Oh yeah, Bob
Odenkirk voices the villain. We don't really get a lot of them though, so that's interesting. But it certainly seems to be that this is going to explore a bit more of the suburban life for them than the other movie did, because that was all about introducing the fact that they kind of live in suburbia in secret, and then kind of breaking that mold with a villain. This one seems to be that it's going to explore their dynamic as a family a little bit, at least on the basis of this trailer. And I can't wait. I think it looks great. I know a lot of people seem to be disappointed by this trailer for some reason. And I don't know why. I can't imagine why. But for me, I'm down. I can't wait. So were you as excited after watching this trailer?
Oh yeah, I loved it. I thought it captured the spirit of the first one, and it looks like you said, they're going to explore more of the human aspects of them just living their normal lives, because the plot of this movie is that Mr. Incredible is left to take care for Jack at the house while his wife and I'm assuming their kids are out there saving the world, so they'll have both dynamics working, and I just thought it was great. It's colorful, it's humorous. I loved all the voice acting that comes back and
the joke of the math joke was absolutely one of the most relatable things in the entire world. I mean, it looks really good. Craig T. Nelson back in the game. I loved his. I
must say, I don't think I've ever said this about this gentleman, but I'll go ahead and say it. Bob Odenkirk has the most perfect voice for animation. Like, he sounds like an animated character. Like, it was beautiful.
He has the perfect inflection and accent.
Yeah.
Of wherever he comes from. That it's a perfect cartoon character. Without not like he's cartoonish all the time, but he just has this perfect voice that you recognize.
Yeah.
And anytime he speaks in anything, I always recognize his voice. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty terrific. Now, the Uncle Drew trailer was pretty baffling, and I guess you could say that it was pretty bad in some cases, in some ways. But let's be real, Chase. It wasn't the worst comedy trailer of the week. So let's move on to what I think was an even worse comedy trailer.
So I just want to preface this by saying that Uncle Drew is about a middle-aged man in old makeup, stars Shaquille O'Neal, and it's based on a Pepsi commercial. Yet this trailer, and I'm going to say it, the last trailer we're going to be talking about, are both worse, and they're actually trying to be comedies. So I don't know how that is even happening in 2018, but here we are. So this one is Amy Schumer, and she's in another movie, and as you can tell, I really love Snatch. This one's called I Feel Pretty, and I feel really bad because Michelle Williams is in it. Please save her career and get her out of that movie. Okay, so I'll try to be fair to this movie, and I'll try to... I don't know how I can be fair. All right, so the movie itself is about a woman who obviously struggles with her looks, and it's Amy Schumer. She does her stand up in this movie. She gets her head knocked out from a treadmill, and she's like, I feel pretty all of a sudden. And this movie's supposed to be a confidence builder for people who don't feel pretty in real life, and it does not come across that way. There's something, I don't know what the word is, Joel, but I guess like a sour taste in your mouth when you watch the trailer. It's almost like they're just making fun of people. Like, I don't know. I felt really dirty after watching this, to be honest with you. It wasn't funny. It wasn't even charming. Because I've seen these type of like goofball, like romance movies before where something happens, they get knocked in the head and like, oh, they're like a different person and they have to learn through their mistakes or whatever. It's just, I've seen these type of like 1990s type of movies, but this one just comes across all just sour and awful, and I'm going to go ahead and just say it right now. Amy, your career's done. In terms of comedies, I think Trainwreck was a one-and-done situation. Listen, she's going to be in like some dramas, but I think she's done. I don't like her anymore.
I disagree completely. I think that she's still a box office draw in some way. Yeah, here's the thing. I kind of agree with you that there's a certain distaste here because you have this like extended joke where she's dancing and the camera, like moves all over her body, and it's obviously, she feels good about herself, where she's not, this traditional idea of beautiful that Hollywood kind of presses on us. And it's just weird because I don't know what joke they're making. Are they making the joke that she's actually not pretty and that she feels pretty? Obviously, that's the title of the movie, and it's kind of the premise. It's sort of a reverse Shallow Hal, where suddenly she sees herself as much more traditionally pretty than she thinks she is, or whatever that's trying to say. How can you describe this movie while remaining respectful of people? She is pretty. She's a pretty person. And so it's just kind of weird to like make a movie like this in 2018. Just feels very strange to me. It just feels like you're kind of, you're hiding the fact that you're making a joke about size by kind of hiding it by saying, oh, well, actually, it's just a bunch of sarcasm. We don't actually think this, or whatever. It's like maybe we'll see the movie and it'll be different. But it seems like they're making a joke that whose kind of the setup is very confused in the punchline. I don't know what it could possibly be, other than the fact that they're making fun of size.
Because she's first of all, you're right. Like, she's not even that bad attractive wise, and she's not even that big. So like,
right.
What are they trying? It's like you said, like what are they trying to say? And it's just really confusing.
Like if they had cut it with like putting, they did this with. I haven't actually seen all of Shallow Hal. I've seen parts of it, but I've seen enough to get kind of the gist. I need to rewatch that at some point. But they kind of remain respectful of that by putting the actors in fat suits, because what you kind of got to do, I think, is make it cartoonish
Yeah.
and make it completely impossible for the audience to empathize with the or sympathize or whatever with the idea that this kind of this body size is unattractive. Completely shut off all avenues to anybody thinking that in any realistic way by making fun of that in a certain way. And I don't think that they've done it here because they've just given us Amy Schumer, and that's not enough because she's not that big. She's and she's actually pretty. So it's just, yeah, it's very, very strange. Very strange to me that this is the joke they're trying to make, that they seem to be trying to make with the movie. Maybe they're not. Maybe it's one of those trailers where a PR company came in, they were only given like 45 minutes of the movie to work with, and then they gave us the best that they could. And it's actually not the movie because they didn't see all the movie. That happens. We've seen it happen.
Yeah,
And
it does happen. And I just don't know who this is going to appeal to.
yeah, I don't get it, and that's why. And plus, I just don't think that joke wise, the movie looks very funny.
Oh, no,
I
it
think
was
that
not funny at all. By the way,
yeah, it's not a funny trailer beyond the fact that it's a weird premise. It just doesn't look amusing. It doesn't look like Schumer's heart's in it. It kind of looks like maybe she has more confidence when she gives herself material to work with. Because Trainwreck was funny. She was funny in Trainwreck, and it's a good movie. I didn't see Snatched. I know that it wasn't written by her in any way. So it may be that she just works with herself better than with others. And it looks like Michelle Williams is slumming. And I don't like this trailer at all. I thought it was less funny than Uncle Drew was, in the way that I had no idea what I was watching when I watched the Uncle Drew trailer. And here I had a pretty good idea. So,
exactly.
Yeah, it's a lot more clear cut.
Well, Joel, this trailer just left such a sour taste in my mouth that you're just going to have to take over the next two trailers.
Yeah. So that's why you did that. Okay.
Maybe.
So, yeah, before we get to the last comedy trailer, we had two others, kind of, the animated movie, which is honestly by far the best trailer of the week.
Duh.
And then we had this, which actually looks okay. It's not a bad trailer. It just kind of looks very generic. It's called The Last Movie Star. It comes from A24, who picked it up after it kind of, I think it had distribution problems or something. Anyway, it used to be called Dog Years, and it stars Burt Reynolds as an aging movie star. Ha, get it? Where he's being honored with a Lifetime Achievement Award. Three other legacy actors are being honored as well, but he's the only one who shows up to this particular festival by being driven there by a young intern, I guess, played by Ariel Winter, who is from Modern Family. She's the younger sister. And then, you have Chevy Chase as his friend, who's like, you got to go to this, telling him that he's got to go to this, even though he feels like there's no reason to. It basically looks like it's in the vein of Danny Collins and The Hero from last year, in terms of the fact that it's this old actor or old artist, I should say, because Danny Collins was a musician, but this sort of older artist kind of reaching the end of his run, both on Earth and in the public eye, and it looks kind of safe and pleasant in that way. It doesn't look cinematic at all. It looks like it's a Hallmark Channel movie to me. But whatever the case, always happy to see Burt Reynolds in something. His performance in Boogie Nights is one of the best of all time. So I'm interested to see him kind of take on a role like this. But yeah, I mean, as a movie, just kind of looks okay.
I agree. I mean, it looks whatever. I don't know if it's just the way it was cut. It just very, like you said, safe. It didn't really look like it was going to try anything different. And we've seen this kind of story before where they focus on, aging actors, aging in general, and people reminiscing about their life, and especially when people were famous, like what happens when they get older. Like we've kind of seen this material before, and it's from the writer of Underdog, Zoom, and Small Soldiers. What?
What?
The hell? So
I had
because
no idea about any of that.
yeah, I was looking up this guy and I was like, Adam Rifkin, what has he done? And I go by his list and I'm like, Small Soldiers, nice. So
Well, Small Soldiers is terrific. It's Zoom and
Yeah.
Underdog that we need to talk about.
Yeah, exactly. It's
Well,
like-
actually, we don't need to talk about them, but you get my point.
but like it's knowing his filmography and the fact that he has tapped into kind of a family market, and now it's almost like he's writing a movie for himself, like a very poignant movie about fame when you get older, because the director was born in '66, so he's not like young by any means. So yeah, it is what it is. I mean, it's A24, so Joel and I will probably get an invite to it, I'm assuming, and so we'll probably see it, but I'm not like over the moon about it.
Weirdly enough, I don't know about that. It feels like one of those things that they did with DirecTV.
True. Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't confirmed that, but I know that it's coming on Blu-ray in March. So it's not even. Yeah, so it might be that they do like a small little tiny theatrical presentation or something, or just leave it to Blu-ray. I don't know, but I know that it comes out in March. So.
Oh, well, there you go. Shows you how much I know. But I mean, like, once I watched the trailer, I had no interest in doing any more research on it, because I was like, okay, like, let's move on. So I believe I watched that one and the Uncle Drew trailer back to back, so that was my day. All right, so Joel, what was the unfortunately the last trailer to grace our presence?
Yeah, so it's funny that we were talking about how Melissa McCarthy and Tiffany Haddish are going to be in this drama together, because they have these two really, like, bizarrely bad looking movies coming out. This one is Life of the Party, and it's basically almost exactly like The Boss. Or not the Boss. I'm sorry. What was the one that was I've forgotten. Anyway, this one basically she plays this mother who's going back to college to I assume kind of get a degree. Maybe she didn't go to college first, or I don't know. In any case, she's going to get a degree, so of course she's going to be hanging out with a lot of college students, which means that she needs to learn the wild ways of college. Yeah, that's basically the plot, and it looks really like cobwebby and completely cliched and just kind of terrible in this way that it's kind of hard to believe it looks this bad, to be completely honest, because this premise isn't bad. It's, familiar. It just looks completely flat visually and comically, and it doesn't look appealing to me at all. So, yeah, this is the one that comes out between Avengers and Deadpool. And spoiler alert, I guess, since we've already kind of figured this out, we're doing a special episode from the Dallas International Film Festival that weekend. We're recording it in the middle of the week, and we're releasing it over the course of the weekend. So we're not even talking about this movie, and I have no plans to see it. So
I don't either.
Or at least not in theaters. I'm going to try to keep up with wide releases. So I'll probably see it on Blu-ray, but yeah, I have no interest in seeing this in theaters.
Yeah, it just, like you said, it's the that F word that I hate using on movies, because it comes across as lazy. It's flat. It's flat in its comedy. It's flat in its cinematography and its visual aesthetic. It's just, it looks like everyone was an autopilot. And even if you were an autopilot, if you can make me laugh, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt, and I might rent you down the road somewhere. But no, you won't even get a rental from me.
Especially after a week of, like, we're going to be seeing a bunch of movies. I'll kind of be a little burnt out, even though I love movies, and I'm probably going to just take that weekend off. And then just kind of, continue on the next week when Deadpool comes out. It just doesn't seem like something that I'm going to make time for after a week of doing other things that are. Did you
hear that movie? Did you hear that? Joel said that he watched your trailer and he was going to be. He felt so burnt out just from your trailer. He's taking a break that week. Look what you have done. So, yeah, that's a really sour note to end on. Obviously, our favorite trailer of the week was Incredibles 2, unless if you want to be bold and say Uncle Drew, which I'm totally fine with as well. But no, Incredibles 2 for the win. And that is it for the trailers, guys. And so, please let us know.
Yeah, we're such a bad week. It's just
It was very bad. And
And plus, it wasn't even like the bad week. It was like two of these came out last week, and I didn't put them on because we had other things to talk about.
well, what makes it even worse is that The Incredibles 2 wasn't even like a release trailer. It was a part of the Olympics. So
yeah,
like if that
it
happen,
it didn't even play in front of Black Panther.
no,
So
that's what I'm saying. Like
yeah.
it was just whatever. So yeah, Hollywood, get your stuff together and please have a better week in trailers. All right, so let's move on, guys, to the topic of conversation, and that would be 50 Shades of Freed. Why did it drop so much in week 2? All right, so the editorial starts now. All right, now we're going to be talking about Black Panther, the newest Marvel installment, and as always, Drew, God, we're saying Uncle Drew so much that I called you Drew.
I am neither your uncle nor am I named Drew.
What if you are my Uncle Drew, Joel? Would you accept that?
I've been found out, guys. I have to go.
I need to find my uncle. All right, so Joel, can you let the wonderful people out there know and tell them what is Black Panther about, and what universe is it a part of? I don't even know what comic book it is.
This is part of the DCEU. No, okay. So
oh, please don't lump it in that category.
Right. So no, this is Black Panther. It's the 18th movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and it's the first one to feature in a lead role the character of T'Challa, who is the heir king to Wakanda, a fictional country in Africa. And we first saw him in Captain America: Civil War, where he was kind of briefly avenging his father's death. His father, T'Chaka, was the king of Wakanda at the time, and he was killed in an attack on the United Nations. And so this movie picks up after that, and basically he's ascending to the throne by way of combat, ritual combat. Very African in that way. Certainly feels like this is a functioning civilization in Africa. So anyway, the plot kind of finds him going, at first going up against Ulysses Claw, who was the one-armed arms dealer that we met in Avengers: Age of Ultron. He's played by Andy Serkis, a non Andy Serkis. And as a friend of mine put it, it's amazing how they made CGI make him look human. I love that. But played by Andy Serkis, who, by the way, is terrific here, even though he didn't technically need to be. He's a lot of fun in this role. And then finds out that actually his real threat is coming in the form of a man named Eric Stevens, played by Michael B. Jordan. He's become known as Killmonger during his service in the United States military, and he's kind of gone rogue. And part of this involves a deal to steal a block of vibranium, which is the most strongest metal on Earth, comes from Wakanda because of a meteorite that hit that very spot of Africa. And so that's basically all of the plot that I'm going to tell you guys, because there's a lot of other stuff that happens in the second act that I won't spoil. So here's the thing. I was very excited for this for basically two reasons. One was the fact that this was the first movie on this scope, even though it's not the first movie in general. It's the first movie of this scope to feature an all-black cast in a big blockbuster that's a mega event, and to feature a hero who was black. That's very exciting. Even though we've had Blade, we've had Men in Black, we've had Independence Day, we've had Steel. I just wanted to bring up that because of Shaquille O'Neal. And, we've had these movies, but we haven't had one on this scale with this budget, with this many stakes, because there's a lot of stakes involved in a Marvel Cinematic Universe movie taking on this kind of movie, even if we don't want to admit it. And they took, this long to do that. It's a very important movie for a lot of reasons, especially right now. And so I was very excited for it to come out because of that, and also because of the cast, the insane cast that stretches from, the largest role being played by Chadwick Boseman to and I'm not going to say who, and I don't even know if Chase noticed him, but even the youngest Chiron from Moonlight shows up in this movie.
Oh, was the beginning or end of the movie? I'm not gonna
In
say.
in ending
Okay,
basically the last shot,
okay.
the last scene before the
Oh,
credits.
I hate you because now that I'm replaying that scene in my head, you're totally right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it took me a second because he's clearly gotten older. But anyway, it's a great cast, very deep. There's a lot of famous faces here, both in the main roles and in the bit roles, and it's terrific to see that. They've kind of pooled all the resources to bring about a bunch of black talent in this movie, and it's great. And also the director, Ryan Coogler, I think is a vital voice right now. He directed Fruitvale Station, which was a terrific retelling of the accidental murder of Oscar Grant. And then he did Creed, which was my favorite film of 2015 and the best Rocky movie. So I was very excited for this, and I gotta say, other than some issues that are kind of nagging, they remain flaws, but they're kind of nagging ones. It's pretty terrific, and it's one of my favorite movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So, Chase, I assume I'm just assuming that we're going to cause a lot of controversy by you hating this movie. I'm just kidding. Go ahead with your initial thoughts and anticipation.
So, all right, so obviously I'm the comic junkie out of the both of us, and so of course Joel knows, like, even if it's called Poop Man, I will still go see it because I'll be like, it's a part of the MCU. I'm going to go see it. But no, I was
Paging
looking.
Marvel, make Puke Man.
Well, Puke Man or Poop Man, either
Oh,
way.
Poop Man. I'm sorry.
Hey, listen, Puke Man sounds even better. Can you imagine the projectile vomiting as a move? That would be really cool. No, I was looking forward to this for many reasons. Obviously, I'm invested into this universe, so I want to see every installment, even if people, think of it as a very bland TV show. Then you know what? Damn it, it's a good solid TV show that I enjoy watching when an episode comes out. Black Panther is one of those ones that will change the game, like Joel said, in terms of mega blockbuster fare with primarily
this paired with A Wrinkle in Time just a month from now.
Oh,
Like
I know it's incredible.
Yeah, those two together
And so,
gonna be great.
just full disclosure, I am kind of the minority at work, and so I work with primarily black men and women, and so we've had this discussion about this movie, and a lot of people, when white people, try to, say like, oh, this movie's important, and they'll fire back like, why is it important though? A lot of people can't answer, and so I was talking with my coworkers, and I think they helped me word it and nail it down perfectly, and it goes like this. When you are a young kid and you look up to these like superhero films, it's nice to actually see people of your skin color be represented in that fashion and be a role model. Now, excluding like Falcon and like Blade and all that stuff, there hasn't been really like this big of a primarily black lead superhero before. And so it's nice to have that be represented, so young children who are black can look up to this movie and be like, wow, those are some kick-ass women, or that's a kick-ass superhero that I want to emulate and represent my community. And there's something kind of powerful about that, and I really appreciate that, and it's being represented in that fashion, because Joel and I have no room to talk, because primarily all superhero movies are white people, so we can't really understand that frustration. So it's nice to see a movie of this importance be at that level. So that's how I look at this movie, as being important for this genre and really kind of changing the game like that. So with that, and looking forward to it and hearing this anticipation that was like striking through the roof, I was wondering if the anticipation levels would be too much. And after seeing the movie, I can tell you I'm not as high on the movie as Joel is, but I will tell you that it's a good movie. Like, yes, I have little nitpicks, but I'm not as high on it as most people are, but I still think it's a solid installment in this universe, and there's a lot a lot of great things to discuss. And the bad things that I have with this movie are minor nitpicks to where like they could have easily fixed with just more post-production work. But other than that, like I can't really be like, oh, well, that was terrible plot-wise or character-wise. Everything fits together really well. I just think the anticipation killed it for me just a hair. I hear people that aren't primarily comic book fans, go, oh wow, this was the best one ever. It's a masterpiece. And it's like when we're throwing the M word around, I get a little sweaty with nervousness. I'm just like, I don't know about that. But I can tell you that this is not a bad movie. I think it is a good movie. But maybe Joel can convince me in his review, because it sounds like he's a little bit more high on it than me. So maybe we can get to me that point, or whatever. So Joel, convince me. Did you want to start with the positives in this one or the negatives?
Negatives, because it's positive. So
Sure.
if to tell everybody, we kind of recently we're still kind of coming into this rule, but if we have a positive review, we start with the negatives because
Correct.
we like to get those out of the way. And if it's a negative review, we start with the positives. So just because there's generally like less of one and more of another. So I'll just start with the negatives. I do think that it kind of stays within the mold of a usual superhero movie in that, we get this hero who's, well, he's not really ordinary here, but he's more ordinary than I guess than he is as a hero, than he is in the garb of a superhero uniform. But obviously he's a king, and then he becomes a superhero, and we get to see that happen. We get to see him face down a villain. We get a lot of action scenes, and we get a clear 3-act structure. It stays within that mold, and I kind of wish that something would, escape that, because even this series at its best, and I still think that that's Spider-Man: Homecoming, did that. And maybe they can't. Maybe they're just, like if it's not broken, then don't fix it. Maybe they don't think that audiences are prepared for something that takes a little bit of a risk with the structure. And it's because the structure works, these good versus evil, these very simple good versus evil stories work because of that, kind of known quantity of the storytelling. But I kind of wish something would venture outside that, and here it doesn't do that. And I think that because of that, it gets a little what I like to call third acty, in that a lot of the third act is a big action, climax where everything is generally tidied up with a lot of action scenes, and that's the only way that they feel that something can be tidied up in these movies, and it gets a little tired. And also, the CGI isn't exactly the most polished. There's a lot of green screen work that doesn't work here. And I think that some of the CGI, like modeling on people and doubles and stuff, is pretty obvious. It's particularly, even though it's a really cool scene, there's this one take casino fight where it's very obvious that that everybody there is replaced by a double, and it's like blatantly obvious because what we're watching is CGI renderings of the actors, and you can tell. And so, sometimes that can be a little distracting. I will say, though, that those are basically my problems. Trying to think, I don't think so, because I think that this is actually a really tight ensemble. I think that everybody pretty much gets their little moment, that at least the important characters do. And if they're not important, then they're pretty much kept to the background. I guess, the exceptions might be Forrest Whitaker and Angela Bassett. Kind of don't get a lot to do, but they are included, and they're really good in their roles. So, just their presence kind of is a positive. But yeah, I mean, I guess if I looked for anything else, perhaps the fact that Andy Serkis' character is a bit of a red herring, and that's his only reason for existing, is a little bit of a concern. But whatever. The thing about this movie for me is that it's so good when it's good that it's really hard for me to care about any of the nitpicks I have. Even if I have them, and even if they remain, it's just hard to care. And that's why I think it registers so highly. There's so much passion elsewhere, and especially in the storytelling. of the movie, much more than in the choppy visual effects work. It doesn't register as highly here than it might in a movie, like The Mummy or whatever, where it was awful and you could tell that there was a lot of visual effects and they were terrible. It's because you were focusing on that because the storytelling was so bad. Here, it doesn't really matter because the story they're telling is so good and it's so complex for a Marvel movie in particular. All the spaces in between, I guess the general structure, it's really hard to care that there's shoddy visual effects work in some of these scenes, especially the placement of the last climactic action scene is like a backdrop that I did not believe existed for 1 second. I still don't care because it's an effective scene. And so yeah, I guess my negatives is it's not exactly the most polished Marvel movie visually, and it kind of remains within that structure, but I still don't really mind those things. So I'll hand it over to you for your negatives. Those are mine.
Yeah, I kind of fall along the same line as you, and I'll add a couple more things. First of all, Joel is correct. As much as I am a fan of this whole franchise and this type of episodic television type of storytelling, it can get a little formulaic sometimes, and you can definitely start to notice it a little bit more, especially if they don't take as much risk as they should. Considering the fact that Infinity War is around the corner, and if that movie doesn't take any risk, I will be equally as pissed because we're getting to a point now where we need to change the game, so to speak, within this universe and how the characters, are going forward. And so, yes, this story is very formulaic when it comes to kind of like that. Not really origin story, but it's borderline where it's like partly origin, partly not. But like
it plays like an origin. We already know his origin from Civil War,
correct.
But it kind of plays like an origin because we get the notes of an origin story. It plays a lot like Iron Man, and it plays a lot like Thor. These movies that introduce us to characters and then set them against villains.
Correct.
That's my point. Yeah, it certainly isn't one, but it's just because they structure it like that it feels like one.
Well, I think that's where I'm more along the lines of just it being a good, solid installment because the story itself is just not really that kind of captivating. However, I might just contradict myself because Joel alluded to some of the storytelling elements, whether it be character interactions or relationships, that I really found potent. So when you have that intertwined with the backdrop of like a mediocre overall story, it's kind of frustrating because there are moments of greatness. The CGI, you were correct. Oddly enough, 18 movies in, I think this is one of the kind of least effective CGI wise. Like everything, like you said, like it just reeked of like either green screen or very noticeable CGI, and a lot of it wasn't polished. And I was actually kind of shocked because, when you're 18 movies deep into this, you figure each movie would get better, and there was just something kind of off on most of the set pieces and how they didn't really blend well with the backgrounds. And I was like, I honestly didn't know what it was, but I'm about to, say a positive that might, be okay with this because it doesn't really bother me that much. It's just very noticeable, but I will give a positive to this point in my positives, and maybe that will help it out. But as far as it appearing, it looks kind of messy in some spots, and it's definitely noticeable. And it's like you said, that whole third act, it's like I didn't believe once that they were in the location that they're in. I was like, they're on a platform in front of a green screen somewhere. That's where they're at. Yes. But, it is what it is. But that is a negative. Another thing is the humor. I actually thought most of the humor did not work, and some of it felt very, very dated. And I was like, it was almost like kind of awkward, and I didn't really like it that much. I mean, there were a couple things that were slightly funny, but
most of them had to do with the sister character.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Some of the lines that she said were a little cringeworthy, but I don't look at this movie for humor. It's just I had to bring it up because that is a negative. A second thing, This is not a part. Or this is not to the actors or the accents that they have in this movie. This is just more of a noticeable thing when you're sound mixing. When you have people like a Chadwick Boseman or like a Forrest Whitaker who have inherently low voices, like they have nice bassy voices, when they are emulating an accent or a of a nation that is not from here, sometimes the bass in their voice can get a little too boomy, and so you can't really hear some of the words through their accent through the speakers in the theater. That might have been my theater problem, but that's just from a mixing standpoint. It got a little spotty here and there to where like I couldn't really hear the word, and it's not their fault.
That must have been your theater, because I didn't have that problem.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, like I said, it's not their fault. They have inherently bassy voices, which is great. I envy them. I wish my voice didn't sound like a 12-year-old. So, but when you're having this accent, sometimes it can get a little muddy. Once again, probably not their fault, probably the theater fault, but I'm just telling you from my experience, that's what I noticed. And the final thing, in terms of negatives, Joel actually might stand up and applaud me. Joel is one of those people that, he doesn't really like to agree with me that much. It's embarrassing for him, but he actually might stand up and give me a gold medal. I know Joel's stance on end credit scenes. I know he thinks they're pointless, and I will actually agree with him on this one. Both of the scenes that were actually at the end of this movie could have been tacked on to the end of the movie. And I would have been fine with that. Like, honestly, the way the movie ended, if you would have put the final end credit scene after that, then the first end credit scene after that, and just ended the movie and just did the credits, we would have been good. Because the end credit scene, the very end one, was something I expected them to throw in, but you could have easily put that at the end of the movie. And the first one was just more of a continuation after the end of the movie. I was just like, and I know Joel is going to be like, well, you hypocrite, like that's what end credit scenes are. They're stupid continuations of the movie, and they should be the end of the movie and not during the credits. I get that. I noticed it more in this one to where they could have just tacked on instead of have us wait for 5 minutes at the end of the credits. So, but that's just more nitpicky than anything. That it's Marvel. They have to do it. And I look forward to the end credit scenes, but I just felt like more of these were just more continuation scenes, and they could have easily been tacked onto that final shot of T'Challa.
Well, to quote Roger Ebert when he was, it's actually on an episode I think that you and I watched together of Siskel and Ebert. To quote him about Siskel, about you, if that makes any sense, the lad is capable of learning.
Regarding Joel, don't be an a-hole about this. You were right on this instance. So you're making me already feel smaller than I already am.
I will remind you of it every day. I'm just kidding. I'm not. No, I totally agree. There was no reason for them to structure that in a way that those end credit scenes were the end credit scenes. You could easily have cut from the final shot to as you said, the last one.
And then go back to back to the first one.
Yeah, well, maybe do them in that order because we had just had a scene with one. I don't know, but
that's true. I mean,
it's just to kind of continue in terms of continuation, we don't see that character in the first one, and it would have been like shocking to jump from that to anyway. It's kind of hard to talk about all of that. But Chase knows what I'm talking about. Y'all know what I'm talking about when you see it.
Listen, folks, editing is not easy. Like you have to make those tough decisions on where to put scenes. Trust me.
Yeah. And in any case, it's like these are the kinds of scenes that bother me. I just don't like that they take these excursions in the I've said it before, but I'll just say it again. I don't like that they take these excursions in the credits to tell more story. Just keep the story in the movie and then entertain us with some random thing in the credits. I much prefer that, but that's me. I'm a shawarma guy. I'm not a with the exception of I love that. With the exception of the initial introduction of Thanos, which was great. I love that scene. Everything else is just like, I'm a shawarma guy. I'm not a, here's Thor's hammer guy. Um, Personally,
Joel's one
so
of those people.
I'm one of those people. It's so weird. I'm a shawarma guy.
You make the movie theater going experience awful for people because you want the
No one,
BS.
no one should ever have any joy in a movie theater. I'm
That's
just kidding.
basically what you're saying.
Pretty much. All of you nerds out there, just stop. I'm just kidding. So, yeah, that's pretty much. So we're pretty much in agreement. I kind of agree on the humor, I guess, but it was
It just felt like annoyingly forced in this one for some weird reason.
it wasn't a comedy like Thor Ragnarok was. So I didn't have as much of a problem, I guess, because it didn't stand out as much to me. Um, It's a really weird argument. I don't think I meant to word that way. But anyway, because I may just made it sound like I had a problem with that in Thor Ragnarok. I actually think that that's the funniest movie.
Well, and the thing with Thor Ragnarok is it pretty much like sets the whole movie up in the very beginning as a comedy versus this one where they have spurts of like comedic relief and it doesn't really work all that well. I guess that's what I was trying to say.
You've heard it here, folks. In November, Chase did not think Thor Ragnarok was a comedy. I remember this. And yes,
That's
this
true.
is one of those,
You're right.
this is one of those creepy things where I remember what you say.
Hey, listen. You are correct. I still don't think it's
Yeah.
a comedy, but the movie sets itself up like that, and maybe that's just because I'm a Marvel hardhead and I just want to see all of them as dramas. But no, I mean you are correct.
It is 2017 was the year of the Marvel comedy. Had a high school comedy.
That's
Had
actually
a
true. Yeah.
funny buddy comedy, and yeah,
Hey,
two
listen, folks.
kind of two buddy
The
comedies.
moral of the story is that people can change their thoughts. It's not like we have to be established in what we previously say.
I have never
Oh, BS! I
changed
don't
my
want to hear it. I don't want to
mind.
hear it.
I'm just
I don't want to
kidding.
hear it. I do not want to hear that.
I'm kidding. Okay, so to go into my positives, the first one is this cast. Man, so good. All of them are so good here. Particularly two of them, but I'm going to start with the supporting cast. So, Lupita Nyong'o, not much of a character that she's playing. I think that we're going to see her in the next one. I actually have no idea, but in Avengers, it might be that I'm thinking of Letitia Wright's character. In any case, not much of a character because we don't really learn that much about her. We know she's a spy, and that she is at the beginning of the movie. She's infiltrated a human trafficking ring, so we know that we know that about her. That she's very much about doing the righteous thing. But she's really good here. She plays T'Challa's ex-girlfriend, Nakia. You have Denai Guerrera, who Walking Dead fans will recognize as Michonne. She is absolutely terrific here as Okoye, who's this fierce warrior who is like the head of the army, so to speak. All of them seem to be female warriors, which is pretty neat. And her husband is played by Daniel Kaluuya, who is a rhinoceros herder.
It sounds so weird when you say that out loud.
Weird. Especially considering everything else everybody else is in this movie. Like his character stands out for being that. But he herds rhinoceroses who are armored with vibranium. And he's terrific. Oh my gosh. I did not expect him to take this role, which is very much a supporting role. I will say this. He's probably like eighth in terms of people that you'd credit in this movie, but he is terrific. And I don't know if Chase thought this, but there's a lot of notes that he seemed to find in this character that I'm pretty sure weren't on the page. Like there's a lot of stuff going on in that performance, and I think it's mostly Kaluuya. And he's terrific here as a guy named Wakabi who has let's just say he has a certain level of loyalty, and it tops out. We'll just say that because there's a lot going on with that character than you might think when I say that he's a rhinoceros herder who's the husband of the fierce warrior. Um, so then, I already mentioned, Forrest Whitaker. You also got Denzel Whitaker, who was from the kid from The Great Debaters, who is not actually. So The Great Debaters was a movie directed by Denzel Washington, and it co-starred Forrest Whitaker, and it had this kid actor in it named Denzel Whitaker, who's related to neither of them. And he shows up here in a brief role at the beginning. In the same scene was Sterling K. Brown, who's in The People versus O.J. Simpson and all of that. And two really solid performances in there. You had John Caney as or Connie, however you say that, as T'Chaka. Let's see. It's so deep that I keep forgetting people. Martin Freeman, terrific, really, really good. He's one of my favorite actors working right now, and he's really good here as Everett Ross, who we also met, I believe. Oh, no, did we meet him in Winter Soldier?
No, we met him in Civil War.
We did. Okay, that's what I was thinking, that we had met both of these people in Civil War. And Andy Serkis, I already mentioned him. He's terrific. He's really kind of intimidating in a fun way. Part of his introduction is him kind of giving somebody the feeling that they're going to be safe if they run away. And it's just like he plays it with such it's so humorous in a dark way. And I really like that. And it kind of sums up the rest of his performance. He has no problem being intimidating because he's just intimidating. He just doesn't have to try to be. And then Letitia Wright as Shuri, so much fun. It might be that some of her dialogue is cringy, but she commits to all of it. She's terrific, and she gets a lot of moments of desperation at the end. Just dramatic stuff going on that she's able to sell after 2 hours of sort of being not really the wisecracking comic relief, but she's funny in that way that she's sort of the cue to T'Chaka's James Bond. She provides him with a lot of the weapons that he gets and gadgets and stuff. And she's a genius. She's built much of the technology at only 16. And anyway, so she's this really strong, decisive female character and plays it really well. But, guys, the best performances in the movie are the two major ones. Chadwick Boseman, terrific. This character is very conflicted about his opinions on the villain of the movie's motivation. He's conflicted because he kind of agrees, but doesn't agree with the method that the villain uses at all. And I'll get to the villain in a second. But he's just really good here. It's a really, really good performance from him. And I thought that he was terrific in his appearance in Civil War, and he's just building on that. He's reserved. He's very much he's reverent almost, to his ancestors. He is trying to figure out a lot, in terms of what comes with the throne. And I thought that he sold that really well. It's a really good performance. But guys, oh my gosh. Okay. Black Panther features one of the best villains in a long, 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 long time. And the reason is because this is a villain who's actually kind of making a pretty good point. I'm not going to tell you what the point is. I'll just say that it has to do with a dark secret in Wakanda's past. And that secret has to do with the fact that they've closed themselves off from the rest of the world. And that includes their own continent. And as we know, Africa was ravaged by the slave trade. That means that Wakanda was not. And there's a lot to do with the fact that this is a secret being kept by the elders of the country. And Eric, he wants those things to be made known. And it's a pretty good point. He's basically just saying all of this uncomfortable stuff in our past. Let's just deal with it in the public eye. But of course, the way that he does this is through awful, awful means, and ultimately personal means as well. And that's the reason that this is some of the most complex villain character work I've seen in a while. And also, I'm just going to say this, and I'm not going to give anything away. This is not a hint about the manner in which his character's time ends in the movie. But I'll just say that he gets the best parting words and actions for any villain character since Severus Snape, and I'll just say that his final lines here reminded me of Snape a lot. And so if you're looking for a great villain in a movie, go see Black Panther because you'll get one. He's complex. He's not just out to, destroy the universe because, probably because he realizes that's such a self-defeating plan. Um, he's out to make a point, and he might do that through horrible, horrible means, and and all of that, and all that comes with those. But he's got a pretty good point, and it's surprising to find that, and that's one thing that I loved here. And Jordan's performance is spectacular because he's able to convey a lot of righteous anger and sadness. And that's by the way, that's key. It's righteous anger rather than generic villainy in this case. And that's why I think it's so valuable. And I think that his performance works because he taps into that with such compassion for what the character is standing for. Even if obviously nobody could possibly agree with the method, I think that anybody can sympathize with this idea. And it's terrific. There's a lot, guys, that I haven't told you about this character or about his motive, so don't worry about spoilers. There's a whole second half of the movie to deal with. I haven't revealed anything too spoilery. There are a lot of notes here that have been concealed and they should not be revealed to anybody. But they only serve to make the character more complex, and I love that. So basically, that's most of my positives have to do with the cast and the character work on these two particular characters, because I think that those are the ones that matter the most. Obviously, this is an ensemble, which means that some of the actors get less screen time than others, but I don't think that Coogler misuses any of that screen time. I think that he's able to, professional that he is, give each of these characters a moment where you can understand them. You can understand their characters. You can sense their performance. You can sense that they're actually giving their performance some effort, and that's through his strengths as a director of ensembles. He's worked with them before, and that's where the biggest part. I also think the action sequences, even if there's some questionable CGI used, I think that they're really effective. I like the casino fight that I mentioned. It's all in one fake take, but it's a convincing take. And this is a director who knows how to do that. Think of the one take fight in Creed. Some of the best choreography in an on-screen combat context in years, I would say. And this one's really impressive, and it's followed by a really cleverly mounted chase scene through a South Korean downtown district that you just don't expect. Some of the stuff that happens in the scene, or the types of vehicles used, or that's kind of hard to describe, but it's a really clever scene. And you get the final one. I think that the final scene between T'Challa and Killmonger is effective. Like I said, I think it's an effective action scene, even if it takes place in front of a kind of a green screen from 2005 setting. It's still very effective, and also cleverly mounted. And I just think that that's pretty, kind of standard for this movie. It's an effective action picture, and it's a really it's character driven. I think it's more character driven than a lot of the MCU seems to be, and a lot deeper because of that. And so that's why I really like this movie. I am a little bit higher on it than you, I think. And yeah, that's my thoughts. I will let you discuss your positives.
Yeah, I mean, it boils down to these few things for me. It's Ryan Coogler's ability to craft a world that felt believable. It felt grounded. I felt like we were watching like this real life location in Africa, and the believability of the characters. And yes, going back to the accents, there was a moment where Chadwick Boseman is so good at the accent. I thought he was actually like speaking Wakandan. I was like, this is a real language somewhere, and he is speaking it. But it's the believability of the characters, the locations, and really establishing Wakanda as its own character. And Ryan Coogler does that in spades. Like, you feel like you're there. It feels like this real palpable location. They rarely go off of it. Yes, that casino scene is in South Korea, and then maybe some other minor locations, but for the most part, it takes place in Wakanda. And besides some of the patchy green screen work, you feel like you're there in this luscious place that is filled with vibranium and trees and people and animals. You feel like it's all there.
I should have mentioned that too. I feel bad because that's a big positive for me too. You really do, like, the first time he enters in that in that warship, when he enters through the fake, like, the veil thing to enter the city, it really captures your eye immediately as this very complex metropolis, and just visually speaking. And yeah, I mean, and then the history of the city is just as fascinating too. The fact that it's been closed off from the world is it's a loaded history, but it's a fascinating one, and I should have mentioned that. I totally overlooked talking about that in my positives.
No, I mean it's totally cool because I mean it's just like it's a great backdrop to, like you said, the wonderful character work, because you get sucked in with the the character motivations and relationships that you completely forget that you're watching a fictional city. I mean you're watching like this El Dorado type of city in Africa, and you just forget that it's fake. And going back to Coogler, the action scenes themselves are very minimal in this movie. It's not a problem with me because I actually think the character work is more important for this type of story. But the action scenes, when they are delivered, like Joel said, despite some of the obvious stunt work and doubling and CGI, they are exciting, and they do show you the abilities of Black Panther and Killmonger and all and everyone else that accompanies these fights. And I'm not gonna lie, it's just, even as a I know this is not going to count towards the film critique part of it, but as a nerdy person, I really enjoyed the kind of advancements of Black Panther.
Just a nerd, just a nerd,
just a nerd. And I take that with pride. But I really appreciate the advancements in his suit. Like, I actually like the fact that it absorbs kinetic energy and it can be exploded to other things if someone touches it. And I was like, that's some interesting type of suit dynamics that make Black Panther one of the most powerful ones, just because his suit is made out of vibranium. It's basically the same metal as Cap's shield, and so he's a strong individual. And I don't know, I just thought that from a visual standpoint, from an action standpoint, it was really badass to see him don the suit, especially with the holding of the kinetic energy. So Coogler, great job, good stuff. Joel's correct. The strongest aspect about this movie is the characters and the acting to accompany it. And that's why I'm going to boost my score up from just a normal solid grade to a good solid grade, and that's where the plus will come in handy. It's because these actors and actresses really put 110% into their role, to where not only do they believe that they're Wakandan, I believe that they are Wakandan. And every single piece of dialogue, movement, whatever, I believed every single second of it. It's because these performances are just out of this world. Starting from the kind of minor ones and moving upward, and these are minor. It's like, Andy Serkis. What a lovable, goofy villain. That man looked like he had the most fun on that set than any other movie he's done. Maybe besides the Lord of the Rings movies, but it looks like this movie, Andy Serkis he had so much fun playing this role. You felt like Claw was he was menacing, but at the same time you couldn't really take him seriously. It's just like you didn't know what to expect, but that's kind of the confusing nature of his character, because he wants you to think a certain way, but then he'll snap and shoot you the next second. And that's a fun dynamic for a villain. Then you have Forrest Whitaker, Angela Bassett. I agree with Joel. They're not really. There's not really much for them to do, but you understand why they're there and as a part of the story and the characters that kind of interweave throughout these people's lives. Letitia Wright as Shuri, great. Wonderful dynamic between her and T'Challa. I felt that brother-sister dynamic. I felt like they've been siblings for a long time. And just to add on what Joel said, it's kind of impressive that she is a teenager in this movie, yet she has created such advanced technology that she clouds people like Tony Stark. Like, she makes Tony Stark look like a dumbass. Like, it's amazing like on how smart she is in this universe, and I can't wait to see her kind of advance more as a character. Deo Kaluuya, you were absolutely correct. I thought his role was really great. Like, he had these like subtle notes to where I was like, I don't think that was written for him. I think he actually did this himself, and like he advanced the character through his acting and really kind of made it one of a character to look out for. Because when the movie ended, I have a bunch of theories on how he can play into the sequel and really, like you said, without spoiling anything, test his loyalty. Martin Freeman, great. I liked him in Civil War quite a bit when he interacted with Bucky and the Winter Soldier, and now he's interacting with T'Challa a little bit more, and people from Wakanda, and just I thought he fit in well. It's like I'm not going to say where T'Challa sees him, but when they meet up and he's like, "Oh yeah, I know you," it's like it's nice to have that familiar face to kind of go along with your missions. Okay, so Joel, you're gonna have to help me on this one. The general actress's name I can't pronounce.
Oh. Denai Gurira.
Denai Gurira. Yes, she surprised the hell out of me. She is this strong, just badass character that I was like, you know what? If I were ever going to battle, I want her to lead the charge and fight for me because I'm a pansy, and it looks like she can kick that person's ass. But just on the building off from the the kind of badassery, strong aspect of her character, there was a lot more to her as well. Because just like with her husband, by Kaluuya, she's also got some loyalty issues as well, to where you don't know where she's going to lie. Because she wants to be loyal to whoever's on the throne or whoever is her superior, but she knows sometimes deep down that may not be the best thing to do, and so that's always conflicting with her, and so I can't wait to see her in future movies. Lupita Nyong'o, yes, her character is not really, it's kind of like a Forrest Whitaker, Angela Bassett situation, but I liked her in all the action sequences. She fits in well with this universe. I mean, there's nothing really more to say because her character is kind of, it's there, but it's not really as important as these two main guys with Chadwick Boseman and Michael B. Jordan. My God. All right, so Captain America Civil War introduced what I was going to predict to be a very complex character. In Civil War, when, spoiler alert, when your dad dies and he is the king of, Wakanda, this, powerful nation, and you are just the mere son to this powerful man, and he dies, you don't know what to feel. And, in Civil War, he had this rage that just channeled through him, which actually mirrored Michael B. Jordan quite well in this one, who had this rage and just wanted to take down Black Panther. And so, but to go back to Chadwick Boseman, there was a lot of complexity to his character as well, because he didn't know what to do. He wants to be this king. He wants to be this leader, but at the same time, he has to don his suit because he feels like this is what he was born to do. And so there's a lot of things that he's, fighting within him, especially with his dad. Do I be like my dad? Do I do stuff differently? And like when you figure out some of the stuff that his dad did, it's like, oh man, like that's awful, but I don't like. I still want to honor my dad. It's like, so there's great complexity that was within him. Most of the time, he felt like this powerful leader, when he was in his suit, he felt like this, this warrior. And then there are some explosive moments with some really great emotional punches that was really shocked as well. Not saying that Chadwick Boseman can't act, but I was waiting for it. I was waiting for those moments, and they kind of came out of nowhere. And I'm like, this is why this guy is the lead, because he can carry a movie. And yes, I agree with Joel 110%. My favorite character is Eric Killmonger, Michael B. Jordan. It's his third time working with Coogler, and it definitely shows. I mean, they have that director-actor relationship where Coogler can get it out of Jordan, get that best performance to where we can actually care about this villain. We understand why he's angry. It's just the methods he's going about it are questionable, to say the least. Yeah. And those are the best villains, is that when you can empathize or sympathize with any villain and understand where they're coming from, those make the best villains.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically they're sort of two sides of a coin.
Yeah.
And the coin is this fact that there's a dark past, and both of them are, saddened by or angry at the facts of that past. But then you get into the methods, and
it's a matter of how you go about it.
Yeah. Exactly. For certain. So, I pretty much in agreement with you on all of this.
Yeah, I mean, I think the strongest aspect, if I had to just pick one aspect about this movie that is kind of the strong anchor to this film, it's the characters and the relationships that they have with each other, whether it be Chadwick Boseman and Angela Bassett, that mother-son relationship, or Chadwick Boseman and Forrest Whitaker, like that mentor relationship, or him and Daniel Kaluuya, where like they're kind of like friends, and with Lupita Nyong'o, I'm not going to say what her character is, but that type of relationship, his relationship with Michael B. Jordan, and just being the villain, like it's all about how they interact with each other and their relationships with their characters, and that is the strongest anchor point to this movie. And I guess some other positives, the action sequences are really well done. Despite some of the CGI work, I think they're exciting. They're exhilarating with, just to see Black Panther in action. I will say this might be a slight negative, but sometimes it is a little too dark to see what's going on clearly. But given the situations that they were in with their settings, it's fine with me. It was just sometimes it can be, especially when you're rapidly editing these sequences together, sometimes when you have minimal lighting, it could be a little hard to focus on, since Black Panther, his costume is primarily black.
I think you're thinking about the opening scene, which not the opening scene, the opening set piece between Black Panther and some insurgents.
That didn't really bother me. It was more of the let's just say the extended casino scene afterwards when they exit the building.
Oh, okay. I didn't have any problems there.
And that's fine. It got a little iffy for me, but once again, we're talking nitpicks. And the final positive for me, I really enjoyed this, because when the album dropped, I was like, okay, they're going to use all these songs, done by or co-done by Kendrick Lamar. I listened to some of those songs; they were awesome. But I was also surprised with the actual score to the film. It was a mixture of epic, like Avengers, Marvel fare, mixed in with tribal music with like drums and string instruments. And I thought that was a good blend. It captured the spirit of the movie, its location, and I actually enjoyed the score quite a bit. And I would actually like to listen to not only the actual soundtrack, but the score as well. So I thought it was a great accompaniment.
Yeah, I should have mentioned that as well. I'm
Joel,
thinking of
slipping.
things as I know I'm slipping. The score is great. Ludwig Göransson, I think is his name, is the guy who composed the music, and I love how there's the sort of the arrangements are fairly typical of Marvel movies, but he incorporates drum beats, whether they be African kind of war drums or kind of a hip hop flavor. It's really cool. And the couple of songs that I've listened to off the album are great. I'm a big fan of Kendrick Lamar, so I think he's terrific. And also should shout out to Rachel Morrison, who's the first female cinematographer to do a project in the MCU. And despite the kind of iffy backdrops, in terms of visual effects, I think it looks really stylish. I think that it's a stylish movie on a visual level, and I'm glad that she's getting more work. She shot Mudbound and was nominated for that, and I think that she's going places. She's already gone places, but I think she's going more places, and certainly impressive. So I'm a big fan of the movie. I think I'll just go ahead and wrap up and give my grade. I guess I'll mention one other negative. See, I keep thinking of these things. So it does rely on a pretty big contrivance in the third act to get Black Panther and Killmonger together to fight. There's the ritual combat, what that leads to, and how they come back together, I think was pretty rushed. Felt a bit like people, had problems with Dark Knight Rises for this reason. The hero disappears for a while to recuperate. Let's just say. And here it felt rushed to me to get to the ending. And it's a kind of a big contrivance. That's another negative. But overall, I'm giving it a B+. And I think that we're on the same grade scale here. So, yeah, I really like it. I think it's certainly one of my favorite movies in the MCU. Probably number 3 or 4. Maybe even higher than that if I thought about it a little bit. And yeah, I liked it a lot. So, are you at the same level?
Yeah, I think we are. It's a very good movie. It's a nice installment to this universe, and this is definitely one of those movies to where it's not an origin story, but it's a nice movie to set the groundwork for just better expansion upon these characters and this environment and stuff. And so, I like the movie a lot, but I don't love it like everyone else. And that's coming from someone that adores this universe to death. I do think the hype killed it for me just a little bit. I know Joel always tells me to never let that affect it, but I walked out going, hey, that was a nice, solid movie, and I will never go higher than a B+. That's still a good score, though. And maybe if I watch it again, maybe I'll be like, wow, I was an idiot, and I'll give it like an A or something. But for right now, I was going to give it a B because I was like, this is a nice, solid movie. But the acting was so convincing and so well done with the characters, I had to bump it up with that plus, and that's why I'm going to go with the B+ on this one.
Very cool. All right, guys, so B+ for both of us, and I'm going to do a quick review now of Early Man. This is a new movie from Aardman and director Nick Park, who's one of the big, kind of big dogs there. This is a movie has a really funny lead into the premise. So the Stone Age began sometime around lunchtime in Manchester, England. And,
I remember that. That was such a funny setup.
So funny. It's one of their little non sequitur things, and I enjoy that with Aardman. So the Stone Age began. I'm just going to say it again. So the Stone Age began somewhere around lunchtime in Manchester. And so these groups of cavemen were just minding their own business when a big rock fell from space, and through the gouge marks made by the atmosphere, kind of shaped itself perfectly into a soccer ball, and the sport of football was born. And so that's the lead into the premise here. And it's really funny, and it's actually why I'm just jumping directly into my positives. I think the first half of this movie is really funny and fun. So we meet Doug, who is one of the cavemen. He's a little younger than the rest of them. He's one of the younger members, and he's voiced by Eddie Redmayne. This group of cavemen are descendants of those original footballers, and they have taken to rabbit hunting in the interim. So they don't really think about hunting anything bigger. They're happy with rabbits. And the leader of the tribe, Chief Bobnar, voiced by Timothy Spall, who's the oldest member at 32.
Which, by the way, there were 2 lines that made me laugh super loud. It was that one where he was like, I can't play. I'm such an old man. I'm 32. And then the other one was there were announcers, and so one of the
Yes.
announcers was like, "This is nothing like the game of cricket. What's cricket?" Like, it was just stuff like that made me like. I was the only one in the theater, by the way, which means I was
Yeah.
laughing by myself. But
That was
it was great.
really that was really funny. So so the first half of this movie isn't, bogged down by plot. It isn't, concerned with any sort of stakes. It's just introducing us to these funny, idiosyncratic characters that are really, really cute, charming to be around. And you get some great little gags. Like there's this thing with deceptive perception of a mallard that seems to be in the distance, and then we find out that it is in a much farther distance than it seems to be. It's actually a giant man-eating mallard, and it's a great thing because just of how it's built up, and then just like just the little puns that the characters make. There's this thing with primordial soup that's terrific. Because the soup then follows them out of the frame. I love that. I thought that it was really fun and a great beginning to this movie. As with Aardman, it's all about like setting up these gags filled with non sequiturs that aren't the punchline, but they're on the way to the punchline, and the punchline is usually pretty solid. I love Wallace and Gromit and the Curse of the Were-Rabbit. I think it's one of the funniest movies ever made. So I was excited to see this. I thought that Shaun the Sheep movie was cute. And stuff like that. I thought Chicken Run was a lot of fun. And so I thought that the first half was very much in that vein. I was having a blast with it. And then they had to go and introduce a plot. That darn plot. Okay. Yeah, so here's the problem. The movie then introduces this guy named Lord Nuth, who is a governor in a nearby city, who has gone forward into the Bronze Age. And this is when the Bronze Age has begun, and the game of soccer is sacred in this town. And in fact, it's such an event, you'd think it was like a tailgate party outside the Super Bowl. It's insane, and everybody loves it. And we meet another character named Guna, voiced by Maisie Williams, who's very skilled at this because she loves it so much that she takes to the field even when it's illegal to, in order to practice. And here, we get a couple of things that are we get a couple of things that are pretty cute. There's this one thing where when you enter I think when you enter like the certain part of a city, you have to give. There's this thing called a voluntary contribution, and and then Doug like bypasses it, and then they yell back at him, "Hey, that guy didn't voluntarily contribute." And so they run after him, which is really funny because it gives us this idea of a totalitarian like system. So it's sometimes pretty funny, but then you get this like really long unfunny scene where Doug has a pig named Hognob, and through a misunderstanding he ends up giving a massage to Nuth, who by the way is voiced by a terrific Tom Hiddleston with a French accent. A lot of fun. He's clearly having a blast in that recording studio. And this whole scene is just so not funny, and it's like the funniest thing here in the second half. And it just kind of falls apart because the whole movie becomes this thing where Doug challenges Nuth to a big soccer match, and the stakes are that, if Doug's team wins, they get to keep their valley. If they lose, then Nuth gets to wipe them out and mine the rock of the mountains for bronze. And it just becomes a soccer comedy, and that's basically it. It's just a soccer comedy that happens to be set in the Bronze Age, or at the beginning of the Bronze Age, I should say. And it's not very funny because it doesn't really take any advantage of, beyond the fact that there's some funny, like early exercise equipment or training equipment, I should say. Like the makeshift goals and all that. just kind of loses its steam because all it does is become a sports comedy, and that's the least interesting like way to take this story. And that's my big, kind of fatal negative thing is that, beyond all the amusing voice work and all of that is just this banal story of, like literally there's really no point being made. It's just a soccer comedy. And it's very disappointing that, a lot of this amazing artistry by the Aardman animators, who obviously, it's stop motion animation, so they manipulate every single character and fixture in a frame, with every frame every time, and it takes a long time to make one of these because of that. You just get this feeling that this movie didn't deserve that treatment because it's just such this tiny little story with no stakes or really much in the way of interest past the 45-minute mark. And luckily it's short. It's an 89-minute movie. If this had dragged on, I think I would be lower on it. But right now, I just think it's a solidly okay, kind of underwhelming movie, and I'm giving it a C+. So not really much to say here.
And believe it or not, Joel took all the words out of my mouth. I would actually give it the same grade because I said this in my letterbox, and I'll say it here. I will never, ever, 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 even if Aardman claymates someone like going to a porta potty and taking a dump, I would still say that has artistic value because everything that they do technically is amazing. This one is just kind of like a snooze fest for a little bit, and I would never go below a C- ever. Because they're such technically, visionary masters at this type of art style, and I'd actually give it the same grade.
Yeah, it's very underwhelming, and I was really looking forward to this. Having this and Isle of Dogs come out, so close to each other, it was really exciting, and I can only hope that Isle of Dogs is better. I mean, I'm assuming it will be, but if it's just very, very underwhelming that this had to be the outcome. But in any case, I'm curious to find out how it did in the wake of Black Panther opening. So I guess go ahead and give me the hints. Anything that's within the top 10 that's new is a contender to be a top 5 guess. So tell me anything that's in the top 10 that's a wide release.
You literally get Early Man and Black Panther. That's it.
Is that it? Do I not get Samson?
Does that count though? Like, no one even knows what that is.
It's from Pureflix. It's faith based. It's got a fairly big release, I thought.
Okay, so yes, if we're doing the top 10, then yes, Samson is your other hint.
Okay, all right. So then I'm gonna guess that it's not in the top 5 because of that. So I'm going to say, okay, so last week had 3 big ones, and all 3 were top 3. Wow, okay. Boy, I have to kind of factor in major drops and the fact that Jumanji's still out there. So I'm going to say that Jumanji dipped down to number 5. I'm going to say, okay. 1517 to Paris is number 4. Yeah, okay. Jumanji's number 5. I think that's still remaining strong. Number 4 is 1517 to Paris. Number 3, oh, hold on. Oh, man. Let me think here. Okay. All right. I'm going to say number 5 is Jumanji because I feel like it probably stayed in there above 1517 to Paris. So I'm going to say 1517 to Paris dropped out of the top 5. So number 5, Jumanji. Number 4, Peter Rabbit. number 3, Early Man, number 2, 50 Shades Freed, and number 1, Samson. No, Black Panther.
Oh my God, you couldn't be any more wrong. You only got one
Okay.
right. All right, so
Wow, okay.
yeah, so you really botched this one. So okay, first of all, I know already people are going to be huffing and puffing and throwing a dirty comment or whatever at me. I'm not making fun of Samson just because it's a religious film. I'm making fun of it because it literally had no advertisement. I had no idea this movie even existed until 5 seconds ago. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah, that's what I'm telling you. So, for all those people that want to throw that at me, I'm just letting you know, don't even go down that road. All right, so Samson is number 10. Cool. Number 7 is Early Man with 3.1 million. That's awful for a nearly 2,500 theater run. Woof. All right. I'm just going to go ahead and go up from there because it's interesting how this is laid out. Number 6, dropping from number 5 last week, is The Greatest Showman with 5.1 million. It dropped 20.8%. Remember that number. Number 5, dropping from number 3 last week to 5, is the 15 to 17 to Paris. With, remember this number as well, 7.685 million. Number 4, staying at number 4 from last week, Jumanji, with 7.945 million, and it only dropped 20.7%. So it and The Greatest Showman are like neck and neck like every single week, and they're dropping theaters, by the way. They're still dropping theaters, and they're still managing to get up there. Wow. All right. Number 3, 50 Shades Freed with 16.9 million. It dropped a whopping 56%. Duh. It's not going to really do more than that. And I should probably go back just a little bit. Early Man, there is no budget listed, and it's going to do better overseas anyway, so I'm not really worried about it. The 15 to 17 to Paris, its grand total right now domestically is at 25 million, with the worldwide total at 36, and its budget was 30. What did they spend that money on? Catering? Like it wasn't for acting, that's for sure.
Train tickets.
Yeah, train tickets. They actually shot on a moving train, so they had to buy everyone train tickets. About that. All right, and number 4, with Jumanji, it's going to make Joel throw up once again. Right now, domestically, it's at 377, and worldwide, it's at 904 on a budget of 90 million. Good God. I saw the movie, and it's whatever. I probably said this last week, but I already forgot. It's a whatever movie. It's more of a rental, but that's way too much money for that movie. I actually will agree with Joel. It's kind of appalling that one's making money. But it's not like insulting like Joel agrees to, but whatever. 50 Shades Freed. Let's see how this one's doing. It's doing very poorly. Domestically, that's for sure, amongst the predecessors. But domestically, it's at 76, and worldwide, it's at 266 on a budget of 55. So guess what, Universal? You made your money. Yay! And if this is something to make you throw up even more, the whole franchise in general is a billion-dollar franchise. Let's let that sink in for a second. All right, number 2 is Peter LaRabbit with 17.2 million. Cool. It only dropped 31%. Hey, listen, people are enjoying it. It's got great reviews, so why not? It's made most of its money domestically with 48 million on a budget of 50. That might not look good on the surface, but this movie is going to do really, really, really well on streaming and home video for like families and stuff. So it's going to make its money back. Trust me. All right. And number 1 is definitely, whoops, I just fooled you. It's 50 Shades Freed. No. All right. So, Joel, would you like to take a crack at the actual number it made?
Well, I was just going to say 200. I don't know anything specific, but I'm guessing 200.
Pretty
Something
damn
like
close.
that.
192.
Wow.
All right. So, this is actually kind of, I don't think people are selling this harder than it actually is. So, first of all, it already opened up a week ago in foreign markets. That's what Marvel does. So right now, in its 2-week run, from a worldwide standpoint, 361. Not bad for a movie that basically had a character in another movie for 10 minutes tops. Here's where it gets fascinating. Out of all the Marvel movies that have come out, it is number 4 in the opening.
Whoa.
So get this. Avengers Age of Ultron, which is a sequel to one of the highest grossing movies of all time, opened up on its weekend with 191. Black Panther, which is an unknown commodity to the mainstream audience, opened up with 1 million more than that. That is insane to me. And also, this is the weekend gross is 192. Now, I am fully aware that tomorrow is President's Day and a lot of people have it off, and they're gonna count this as a 4-day weekend when they get those numbers in. Joel and I look at the weekend numbers, so this is what it's at on Sunday, 192. It's gonna make probably top out around. They were saying like 220 predictions for the 4-day weekend, but as far as 3-day goes, it's 192. So Joel, when you hear that type of number, like, does that like shock you that it's the 5th largest opening of all time?
It's a pretty big deal. I mean, you're right. It's sort of this unknown character who just showed up in another movie for 10 or 15 minutes, and clearly that struck a chord with people, and also the facts surrounding the movie's cast and director and all that. It's a pretty big deal. I'm very happy to see this.
Yeah, it's one of those things that you feel great inside. You feel good that something like this that will influence a lot of people within the Black community in a positive message, and show that they can have heroes too, and it's not just all stupid white people. It's great. It's just a good feeling, and the fact that it almost made $200 million on its first movie, good freaking gad. All right, so that is it for the box office, guys. There's really honestly no big dips or anything. The only one that I saw that was noteworthy is a movie that Joel and I saw what seems like 10 years ago. Film Stars Don't Die in Liverpool actually went up 118%, and it gained 68 theaters, so I guess that's kind of good. Other than that, everything else just had minimal drops. Oscar Watch, Darkest Hour dropped 44%, I, Tonya 47%, Three Billboards 34%, so that's had the best hold so far. Shape of Water 47%, and The Post 45%. And you guys have to keep in mind, these movies keep dropping theaters, but even amongst their drops, they're still, they're holding in there for people that want to catch up on those movies. Lady Bird dropped 32%, Call Me by Name dropped 23%, so, there's definitely ones out there that are doing better than others, but that's kind of the Oscar watch before we get into next weekend, Joel, which is the actual, or not next, 2 weeks from now is the ceremony, so we're getting there. And speaking of next week, Joel, what are we doing for 219 for that one?
It's kind of up in the air because Chase is going to be out of town, but the plan is that we might talk about Annihilation. Certainly I will be if it's not both of us, and also I'll be doing an extra review of Game Night. So that'll be that should be it.
So yes, if just to reiterate, if we record on Sunday, it is a very strong possibility that Joel will just review everything, and I will just kind of sit back and hear him out, and maybe I'll ask him questions, because I hear Annihilation is I hear it's, once again, the M word is just being thrown out loosely nowadays, a masterpiece. And I heard the test audiences hate it, which means Joel and I will probably love it. So I'm very curious about how strange and how deep this movie is going to get. So if I don't see it, I will definitely be asking a lot of questions to Joel.
My guess that this movie is closer to something from Tarkovsky than to the usual Hollywood thing is probably correct, given the responses from the test audiences. I think that this is a movie that's not going to offer almost any answers about any of its mysteries, and I love that idea.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's probably why it's being hated, because it's actually about something that we don't really understand even at the end of the movie. And I'm all for that because that was Tarkovsky, by the way. If people out there don't know, he directed stuff like Solaris, the original movie uh, from Russia, and he's probably, and this is a pretty shocking statement, but for me, it's between him and Kubrick for who was the best person to film with a camera in the history of the world. It's between those two, and this movie seems to be more along the lines of that than people are probably going to anticipate. So, yeah, I'm very, very excited for that movie. And game night looks fun. It's just one of those things where I forgot that it was coming out.
Yeah, until Joel told me, I forgot it was even coming out this month. I thought it was like in April or something. So whatever.
Yeah, it seems like an April kind of movie.
Yeah, April, May, or what? Like it just seemed more like a summer comedy than February 23rd. But whatever. But yeah, that will be next week, guys. So it'll be kind of up in the air and like in terms of who's reviewing what. But Annihilation for sure is the main topic, and then Joel will briefly dive into game nights because I'm assuming there's not going to be much to talk about. So. Yeah, so that will do it for next week's episode. And this week's episode, let's go and end it right now. Joel, another great one. Another episode in the bag talking about the good old King of Wakanda, Black Panther, long live the king. And so, speaking of king and king-like figures, Joel is one of those. Joel, where can people find you online?
You're overhyping me. No,
that is true.
So you can follow me on Twitter at RealJoelCopling. That, of course, is REEL. You can follow me on Letterboxd at jcopling. You can find some of my writing at DallasMovieScreenings.com, for which this is the official podcast. You can also go online to see my reviews. I didn't just review Black Panther and Early Man this week. I also reviewed Basmati Blues with Brie Larson Bex, which is a lesbian romance with Lena Hall. And then The Ritual, which is one of the new of the like 1,050 Netflix movies that have been dropped recently. It's one of those. And then also my first 0-star review of the year, which is Woody Woodpecker, from the director of Jingle All the Way 2, Tooth Fairy 2, Beverly Hills Chihuahua 2, Chairman of the Board, Inspector Gadget 2. Do you get a pattern here? It's awful, 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 awful. So go. That review is fun to write, by the way. So please go on and read that at joelonfilm.com. That's my website.
Yeah, if you guys want to follow me on Twitter, it's at RealChaseLee. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Sometimes I'll have movies on there that we may not discuss, and so you can get additions to that. I'm on Letterboxd. Yeah, that's pretty much it for that. And then, of course, this podcast, whether you're listening on iTunes, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, or SoundCloud, please spread this around and let people know this is the definitive movie podcast, and you just love hearing about two nerdy dudes in a bedroom somewhere talking about stuff for the internet. We enjoy it for you guys. It's one of my highlights of the week. I know it's not Joel's because he does not like me. He's definitely being blackmailed into this. But no, we enjoy you guys listening every single week.
Help me. Send help.
Joel, wait until we stop recording. You guys are awesome. Please continue to listen, and we will join you guys for episode 219 next week, where the main discussion will be Annihilation. And of course, the music is done by my friends band Fervent Roze. All that stuff, links are in the description below. Peace out, everyone. Have a good week or weekend. Good night, whenever the hell you're listening to this. Bye-bye.
Bye.